form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time.
Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. The shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspects in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public is not being told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. This is Talk. We are, of course, the home of common sense. You knew that already. And I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you are listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is absolutely wonderful to have your company today. Another day. Another big news day. What a surprise. So much to talk about today. And indeed, we had an awful lot to talk about yesterday, and an awful lot of you have been sharing that. I mean, I don't use that word all the time. I really don't. That extraordinary video of my interview with Yvonne Ridley, who is a journalist, but also a pro-Palestinian activist, on the show yesterday, where she talked about the kindness of Hamas to the hostages, including, I absolutely kid you not, the fact they got goodie bags when they were set free. Quite extraordinary. If you haven't had a look at that, oh my God, take a look, but make sure you're not eating or drinking at the time, because the spluttering out will not be good. Anyway, coming up in this hour, we are going to talk about an equally extraordinary story. A family of Palestinians who live in Gaza. That's where they're from, OK? They've been granted the right to live in the UK after applying through a scheme meant for Ukrainian refugees. You might wonder how that would happen, given they are from Gaza and not Ukraine. This could, of course, open the floodgates for refugees from Gaza to come to Britain, because the exceptional circumstances for this family, well, would apply to pretty much every family in Gaza, all 1.8 million people. Plus, we're going to be talking about Labour's choice for the next Borders Watchdog chief. He plans to work part of the time from his home. He likes to work from home. In Finland, which is where he lives. Does that bode well for you and me in terms of dealing with that issue? I'm not entirely sure. Plus, the future of the bill to legalise assisted dying has been thrown into doubt. We discussed this on the show yesterday as well. MPs who previously backed it, members of the public like me who previously backed it, so they're now reconsidering after the key safeguard of a High Court judge approving each individual decision was dropped from those plans, something which, by the way, had been promised would not happen by the MP behind it, Ken Leadbeater. Also, we're going to be talking about what's been going on in America with Elon Musk's army of Doge staff saving the US Department of Education over $900 million just on Tuesday, as Elon Musk vows to root out Washington, D.C.'s highest paid bureaucrats. An awful lot of people on salaries salaries which just simply do not match the millions that some of these people seem to have in the bank. What is going on? I wonder if we should try and do the same here. Anyway, all of that is coming up, plenty more besides. I do want to talk to you, though, right now about this story about Gaza, because this Palestinian migrant family, we've got 2 parents, 4 children. Of course, there are 4 children. They live in Gaza. They do, though, one of the members of the family, they do have a brother who lives in the UK, who, for some reason, was allowed to come to the UK in 2007 and has been granted British citizenship for some reason, as we know now, from what Kemi Badenoch was having to say last week, just how easy it is for people to get British citizenship. The court has been told there's been no face-to-face contact whatsoever with the brother for 17 years, but they remain close. So close, in fact, that they were able to claim the right to a family life under human rights legislation. Yeah, that old little colonel, to come to Britain and be granted leave to stay. Now, initially, of course, their leave to stay or leave to come to this Britain and remain here was refused by the lower tribunal that looked at it. I wonder why. Well, because they applied under the Ukraine Family Scheme, set up, of course, back in 2022 for Ukrainian families. It was called the Ukrainian Family Scheme. There's a clue in there, isn't there? It's for Ukrainians. It's for people who had a link here somehow, who were able to come and live in this country. We had MPs, we had ministers, people sponsoring Ukrainians to come and live here because of the Russian invasion. It wasn't meant for people from places that weren't Ukraine, hence the name of the scheme. However, extraordinarily, when this family appealed to the upper tribunal, a judge called Hugo Norton-Taylor, yes, exactly. He overturned that decision. He granted their appeal, allowing them to come to the UK on the basis of Article 8, right to life under the European family life under the European Convention on Human Rights. He said there was an exceptional situation here. They'd lost their home. It was bombed by Israel after what Hamas attacked on October the 7th. Isn't that the case for pretty much every single Palestinian living in Gaza right now? Why would this family be granted leave to come to the UK and remain here? Not just to get in, to remain here, and all those other families not. This is going to open the floodgates for hundreds of thousands of people to come here. Well, you might say, they're in need. Well, yes. Well, what about the countries nearer? What about Egypt? What about Jordan? What about Saudi Arabia? Other countries, very, very wealthy countries, very, very big countries with lots of space. Why are they not taking those Palestinians? They took in Syrian refugees. 5.5 million of them, and yet they don't want to have a single Palestinian refugee. What do they know that our upper tier tribunal judges don't about the risks to this country of people from Gaza making their homes here? I wonder. Well, I want to hear from you. What is your reaction to this story? Try and keep it clean, guys. I can't put you on air otherwise, but oh my God, I can feel your pain. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK to 87222. You can get in touch on X at Talk TV as well. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. Let's put that question to Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, who joins us this morning in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us, Benedict. Again, you read these stories, you think they must be making it up. One tribunal says no, another says yes. Someone advised this family, hey, try and come in under this Ukraine family scheme. We'll get you in. And it somehow worked. This is opening the floodgates, isn't it?
Yeah, that clever lawyer has earned their money.
By the way, we're the ones paying that lawyer, is my guess.
Well, yeah. that's fine. Somebody has to pay them. Nobody in Gaza has any money, even though billions have been poured into that area of the world, and yet somehow it's all just sort of disappeared into the sea.
Yeah. Or under the ground.
Yes, it's not to be seen anywhere, or maybe the odd Swiss bank account here or there. Well, this is, I'm afraid, part of the problem, and we do actually have to look at what it is in terms of the long-term plans for Gaza, who it is that's pushing it, and also who's cheerleading it. It's very clear that many in the Israeli right would love this actually to happen. They will be delighted at Donald Trump's suggestion that lots of people could end up being pushed out of Gaza, temporarily or otherwise, because even if it is only meant to be temporarily, a lot of those people won't come back. This idea, of course, that you can't possibly move these people because they all desperately want to live there, well, that's not true. Give them a ticket to a Western country and they'll go, well, thanks for everything, fellas, but we're out of here. And they will be coming here because actually, as bad as this country is, it is still significally better than Gaza is.
We're not that bad. We could be better, is the argument we make.
I have a lot that I could say today, but yes, it is actually a decent enough country to come to live in if actually your alternative is the Gaza Strip. They will come here, they won't leave, and I think that's the difference.
Well,
here.
also they'll know someone else, they'll have a distant relative, and then that person will, under Article 8 of the European Convention, will have a right to be here.
Yeah.
How do you have a right to a family life with your brother? My stepsisters lived in New York for most of my adult life.
Yeah.
I don't have the right to go, well, I'm just going to go and live in America because my stepsister lives there.
Yeah, it's
absurd.
It is. You can make it very tenuous.
You can make an argument. You've got a right to be with your children. You could. That's a tenuous argument, even when people are coming from abroad. Well, your child can go back where you are.
Yeah, and I think the difference here is, of course, lots of people will then say, but it was fine when it was the Ukrainians, and people will try to paint that as racist. But the point is, the Ukrainians want to go back. None of them
going back.
Yeah, none of them thought, do you know what I want? I want to go and live in temporary accommodation in Britain for the rest of my life.
It was almost entirely women and children in a particular circumstance. And yes, a shared culture. I would have thought that actually, lots of these people would be much happier going somewhere. Well, Jordan. I mean, this is fascinating. When we saw, was it the Egyptian president yesterday who was with the with Donald Trump? Yeah. I mean, there've been lots of different trips from leaders in the Arab world, and he sort of kept having a bit and trying not to sort of, still being able to flattering him, but basically going, no, we really do not want to have all the Palestinians. But why is it that Jordan, that has taken millions, more than half of Jordan's population of Palestinian descent, why does Jordan not want them? Why does Egypt not want them? Why is Egypt built? By the way, everyone talks about the people not being allowed out of Gaza into Israel. Have you seen the pictures of the barbed wire fence and the wall sort of metres wide that the Egyptians have erected on their border? They don't want them. The Saudis don't want them. Why doesn't anyone want the Palestinians from Gaza?
That's the great hilarity, if you can call it hilarity, of this whole situation of people saying that Israel is committing a genocide. Under the Genocide Convention, Egypt is just as much a party to it if they're found to be guilty.
Open the border.
Absolutely. They're the ones that are sat there going, no, absolutely not. Even though the Sinai Peninsula is there and it's very empty. The Egyptians are under quite a bit of pressure from the international community because their country is sort of on a knife edge perpetually. They need a lot of aid from the rest of the world. So if they were going to go anywhere, they probably would end up going there. And also, Egypt is run by its military. It's not an open and free democracy. Yes, but it's also got
the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood are just another wing of of Hamas and everything. They're all extremists.
So actually,
they're all extremist nutters.
So a lot of people in Gaza would actually have no real cultural problems assimilating into that part of the Sinai. Jordan doesn't have as many resources or other land, but as you say, there are other countries now, and especially seeing as now those countries in the region are recognising the Syrian government and are saying people now need to go back. It's not as if there isn't going to be spare capacity there for migrants, because those people are supposed to be going back to Syria.
One of the things I do love about Donald Trump is calling out these Arab countries who just say, oh no, we so support people. Okay, we'll take them in. I mean, again, also, given that the vast majority of people who were displaced, when Israel was created, have actually gone to a lot of those other countries already. I don't know why we're making this exception for this one group of people. The state that Gaza is in, Hamas's fault, no one else's. You'd think they'd be happy to leave. But, just tied into that, and I want to come back to what's going on here, but tied into that, Donald Trump is doubling down on his plans for. We can't quite,
his plans.
Plans in inverted commas. I'm using the term very, very loosely.
What are the plans, Donald? I'll let you know.
We've all dated those men, haven't we, girls? You got to make a plan. A plan for the Saturday. So Saturday noon, hostages out, all hostages out. And there is no reason why Hamas can't release all those hostages. I worry about how many are still alive, given the state of the last three men. I have a horrible feeling that actually there are far fewer alive than they want. Or maybe they're still trying to fatten some up. To make them not look so bad, because actually the outrage that people felt. It's like they almost said the quiet bit out loud. Oh, yeah, we've been torturing and starving people. It turns out we're not the nice people who give people goodie bags, like Yvonne Ridley's mentioning. But here's the thing. That Hamas deadline on Saturday is basically giving a green light to Israel to say, look, we're going to back you if you want to go back in again. Now, I would 100% support Israel doing that. The chance of them, if they don't get those sausages on the weekend, of getting them out alive again is going to be virtually zero. What would you do if you were Benjamin Netanyahu?
I think I did say when this was announced, this really is a temporary thing, and it's probably not going to end particularly well, because Hamas's only leverage really that exists are the hostages and the opaque question of whether or not they're alive. Basically, it's holding that over them, saying, "Well, you're not sure," and it could be that
they've got out most of the women. I mean, they're young people.
They have.
You know,
I think we underestimate in this country how important it is to Israelis to get as many out alive as possible, because it's a much smaller culture. You know, almost everybody knew somebody who had been involved, and of course the history of genocide. You know, this is a country where is only just about as large in terms of Jewish people as people who died in the Holocaust. You know, when you think about it in those terms, every single life is precious.
And
to
it's
them.
this idea of no man left behind.
Yeah.
Sort of woman.
They exchange prisoners for the remains of people, but they also do it because they know we're going to get our revenge at some point. Okay, you're not in prison anymore. Go back to Gaza, go back to the West Bank. We'll get you at some point. And
let's hope they do, because a lot of mass murderers and terrorists have been let out.
Frankly, that's the sort of attitude that I think a lot of us admire. We'd like our own governments to do that, but they don't. And that's one of the things that is used to beat Israel with. It behaves like a country you wish you belonged to if they wronged you and your family. Ours doesn't. You know, most European countries don't. Yeah. The United States up to a point, sometimes depending on what it is.
No, quite a lot. I mean, I have to say, I'm very much of the view. I mean, with Israel now, I mean, the fact that so many in the West have not been back in them. This Keir Starmer went back in France, and I mean, I'm glad they've now got Trump in the White House to give full backing. I genuinely, I think there are some moments when it's this very simple moral debate, moral discussion. It's a yes or a no. Pick the right side, guys. I'm sorry, and it doesn't mean that your side is perfect and does everything right and doesn't commit atrocities. All countries commit atrocities during war. All countries, including our own.
But it's your side.
But overall, which country is in the right? Well, if you think it's a complicated debate, you're just not paying attention, in my view. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Let's also talk about what's going on here, because the Labour government is desperately trying to sort of look strong on a lot of these issues on immigration. I mean, again, very hard to do that when you've got the front page of the Telegraph pointing out that we could just have hundreds of thousands of Gazans arriving on our shore. I mean, we used to have. Remember, London used to be known as Londonistan, you know, because you could basically operate with impunity.
Wasn't it also known as London Grad as well?
London Grad,
depending on who we're taking in.
Yeah. We'll take anybody. Yeah, we'll take anybody who doesn't go to sign up to our values and is going to wish us wrong. Yeah. But the government is apparently toughened up rules, making it almost impossible, not impossible, for a refugee who arrives on a small boat to become a British citizen. This new guidance states that anyone who enters the UK legally, if you've made a dangerous journey via boat, lorry, whatever, you will normally be refused citizenship, regardless. You could have been here 20 years, but if you came in like that. And again, well, we know there are going to be exceptions. Is that good enough? And given that we're told we were going to smash the gangs, we've got a new borders watchdog. The preferred candidate, he's been basically having a hearing in front of MPs to confirm him. His name's John Tuckett. He was named last night as a preferred candidate for the job of Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration. He 130 grand. Nice work if you can get it. He's hinted that basically, well, he'd like to work, at least pretty much half the time at home. He believes in working from home. He says there'll be time for being available, and then dedicated time whenever for quiet reflection and writing reports. His home is in Finland. We're going to have someone who's in control of basically inspecting our borders, and he's going to work. He'll be working from his lovely little house in Finland. I mean, are they having a laugh?
Do we know where his house is in Finland? Because you say he wants time for quiet reflection. He could be looking after our borders and then go stand at the window looking at the Russian border and thinking, I've made some interesting life choices.
But it's utterly mind-blowing. A, we couldn't find anyone who lives in this country. B, no, I'd quite like you to turn up. I think I'd quite like you to be on top of things every day and inspecting things. And, maybe you could do a bit of quiet reflection while you're on the train there.
The trains that don't work and don't get you from A to B.
Benedict's a bit stressed. Benedict only just made it by the skin of his teeth from being on a stopped train all morning.
Benedict is not having a great time and is very furious about the state of everything.
He has to pay through the nose. There, people, no change.
He has to pay through the nose for things to not work and is then told that he's the problem if he complains about it. Benedict is very disgruntled at the state of this country.
Benedict's also really creepily talking about himself in the third person.
Benedict's ego has slipped the bonds of his body, and that's how angry he is.
Well, why don't you do this job from Finland?
I might as well do it from Finland, frankly.
At least the trains work in Finland.
I tell you what, but yeah, so I got up and I got a flight into Finland. It would get here on time at the very least, because actually things in Scandinavian countries do actually work. Things in Russia even work better than they do here. This is one of my things about the whole
debate about tax rate. Yeah. I think, as we know now from a lot of countries in Northern Europe, actually, a lot of those people, polls show they're not bothered about paying high taxes in those countries.
Things work.
Because things work. Yeah. What we do is we pay very high taxes, but nothing works.
Well, I suppose in Norway there is also the fact that they've used all of our oil to pay for their pension, so I'd be pretty relaxed about paying high tax as well if everything works, because the second I put my feet up, you're thinking, the British taxpayer has had the wool pulled over their eyes again, and I am going to be living it up large for the rest of my life with my free healthcare and everything. Yeah, fantastic.
Listen, I want to talk about one other story before we get to a break. We've got lots of calls, as you can imagine, coming in about this Palestinian family in Gaza given the right to stay here. I mean, every single day you wake up to a new announcement from the Oval Office. I mean, we're basically an international show now, aren't we? Basically a new MAGA head has been appointed to just sort of look at basically, publishing all of these secret government files that have been sitting in darkened rooms over the years. We're looking at, the assassination of JFK, of Jack Kennedy, of Robert F. Kennedy, of Martin Luther King. We're looking at stuff about UFOs, the shooting of Lee Harvey Oswald, the assassin of JFK, the Jeffrey Epstein client list. Basically, a load of stuff, some of it under wraps for decades and decades, going to be released. Lots and lots of conspiracy theorists on lots of these things. I have to say, there is simply no excuse for not releasing things long after. I mean, what we talking? I mean, JFK was, that was before I was born, so we're looking at about 60 years, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Why can't that stuff be released? Should have been by now.
I don't know.
Unless there's something to cover up.
We still don't necessarily know who's still alive that was involved with it, actually, because we don't know what's in the files. It could be all kinds of things. I'm particularly looking forward to the day when they start releasing all of the declassified stuff on regime change all around the world, and all of these sort of things that you sort of know American money was behind this, and who was it who funded this particular rebel group that ended up marching on the capitals, and then people were pushed out of helicopters. You sort of know the CIA was behind it, but we haven't got the files yet. At some point that is going to come out, probably under Trump. I'm looking forward to that.
I also want to see the Jeffrey Epstein client list, because it's basically everyone. Oh, including, by the way, big mate Lord Manderson, the former government minister, and now our man in Washington, because that seems normal. I mean, which of us can honestly say, hand on heart, we have not been really good friends with someone who's been convicted of child trafficking? I mean, which of us can honestly say that? We've all done that, haven't we? Haven't we? Oh, no, we haven't. Anyway, 10:22 is the time. We're going to take a break. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000, text 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV about this Palestinian family from Gaza being granted the right to live in the UK. They've applied through the Ukraine Family Scheme, yet really could open the floodgates to thousands, even hundreds of thousands of Gazan refugees. Your reaction, please. Keep it clean. This is Talk.
this story over the weekend, frankly, was made up twaddle and nonsense. We put out a press statement dismissing it as such. Look, it's irrelevant. We're just going to focus on doing what we do well. There will be more news out in the next couple of days, which I think people will find very interesting with regard to Net Stupid Zero. And we'll just push on and we'll just keep telling it as it is. And people will say, wow, these people are deadly serious.
So you wouldn't take Boris Johnson at all?
Definitely not. Absolutely not.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Benedict Spence still with me as well, despite the best efforts of British Rail, or whatever they're called this week. Maybe, hey, under Labour, they may well be in a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
They've got to come up with something popular at some point. Right now, let's get to your calls after a Palestinian family, I kid you not, mum, dad, 4 kids, always 4 kids, live in Gaza right now. But, one of them's got a brother. Mum or dad's got a brother who lives in the UK. For some reason, he's got British citizenship, having arrived here as a Palestinian. They've been granted the right to live in Britain after applying to a scheme meant for Ukrainian refugees. But apparently, a judge in the upper tier tribunal seemed to think that they had an exceptional need because, their house had been bombed in Gaza. Well, I mean, that's pretty much 1.8 million people in Gaza, isn't it? That opened the floodgates. Why on earth are activist judges making these decisions when there is no Gaza family scheme for refugees, quite deliberately? I'd love to know your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Barry is on the line. He's in Paisley in Scotland. Hello, Barry.
Hey, how's it going? How you doing?
Very well indeed. How are you? What do you want to say?
Well, I wanted to make the point, raise the alarm, really, quite seriously. And it's with regards to allowing Palestinians to move here for any reason whatsoever.
Yep.
You need to understand the difference between your Palestinian Muslim and your average Muslim. Palestinians are literalist Muslims. They follow the doctrine of the Quran, the Hadith, the Seerahs quite literally. These are the types of Muslims that want to throw gays off the roof of buildings and stone women to death. All we need to do is look at Lebanon in the 1970s. They used to be known as the Paris of the Middle East.
Yeah.
A Christian country, all the best universities, all the countries round about Lebanon used to send their kids to all those universities.
Yeah.
Lebanon allowed Palestinians to move there in the 1970s. Fast forward 50 years to now, and the Lebanese people have been bred out of existence. They only had 1 or 2 babies per family. The Palestinians moved in there, they're having 6, 10, 12 children per family. The country now, Lebanon, is a disaster. So we can look at Lebanon as an example of what could happen.
Yeah, well, and it's almost like that's what the Egyptians and the Jordanians and Saudis. And by the way, these are not non-extreme countries in all ways. I mean, again, the Jordanian ruler may not be extreme. An awful lot of the Jordanian people are. I mean, in terms of if you actually look at public opinion, their views on, on October the 7th and the like, and Hamas. This is the thing. They're not taking these people for a very good reason. And I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush. I'm just playing the odds.
Yeah. Look, the Quilliam Foundation done a report a few years back, and it found that around 15 to 25% of the world's global Muslim population wants to do away with democracy and replace it with Sharia law.
Yes.
We cannot allow people to move here that want to fundamentally change how our country operates by having 10 babies. 50 years from now, we're finished.
And again, people now, there'll be people listening to that and they would go, whoa, what a horribly bigoted, Islamophobic. And I don't think anything you've stated there isn't actually a perfectly reasonable point and a demographic point, a cultural point. We shouldn't have anyone come to our country who doesn't share our values. And again, there is a large strain of Islamism which does not approve of democracy. It doesn't agree with democracy. Well, then I'm not sure ours is the country for you, is my response.
Yeah, look, we must have an adult, grown-up conversation about Islam, fundamental Islam, literalist Islam. There is a difference between your Muslim that doesn't even go to the mosque, and then your Muslim that
I've got Muslim friends who go to mosque, but they don't sign up to any of that. Exactly, completely. Barry, I really appreciate your call. Thank you very much, Steve. Just very brief response from Benedict. You were nodding along to some of that.
Yeah, it's why it's so sort of amusing that the multiculturalists and sort of in this country like to talk about the concept of a Muslim community. There's no such thing, and it sort of gives the game away about how little they know. The average sort of Muslim in North London or something thinks a completely different thing from the average one in Bradford or somewhere like that.
Well, depending on which country their heritage is from.
Country, but also what mosque they go to. Actually, these things matter.
Absolutely. Well, we know we've had a massive big issue with hate breach of the mosque, preaching very extremist views. Exactly. Let's go to Mark. He's on the line in Lincolnshire. Hi, Mark.
Hi there, Julia Maducky. All right this morning?
Oh, I love a duck. I love it. Thank you very well. What do you want to say, my love?
Just, I suppose, echoing what Barry was in Scotland was just saying. These people just should be nowhere near the West in general. I mean, you're talking about, nearly 2 million people that have had about 7 decades minimum of utter indoctrination, of hatred, not just towards Jews, but to Christians, to Hindus, to most other Muslims, and to, Western liberalism in itself.
This is what people don't get. They hate us just as much.
Absolutely. As Barry was saying there, go and ask Lebanon, Iran, Jordan itself, Egypt. One of the reasons Egypt doesn't want them is because they've let them in the past.
Yep.
And they've caused nothing but trouble there. They suddenly get terrorism. They suddenly get all these problems. What absolute idiot would even think that this is a good idea?
Well, an activist judge. An activist lefty judge. I mean, who else?
We should not be surprised. But, there is another side of this, I think, as well, that I think is in play quite a lot. And it goes back to the old comment. I can't remember, was it Blair that said it? I know one of them said it back in the day. Yeah. We'll drown them in diversity.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've worried about for quite a while, particularly under this government, is the more we rail against something on the right, the more they will do it.
They double down. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. They will. But you know what? We have to speak out because we're on the side of right and honesty. And actually, if you want to protect, people in this country who are of minorities, you need to protect them from those belief systems which actually hurt them as well. I mean, that's the reality. Mark, I really, really appreciate your call. Thank you so much. Lots more calls, lots more texts. I promise we'll get to as many as we can. Time now, though, to find out just how you could be in with a chance of winning £25,000.
It's competition time, and we're giving you a chance to win a whopping £25,000. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Right, wait a second. Oh, a very good morning back again to you. I'm so sorry we came straight back out. I didn't realise that. Coming up after the break, we're going to be talking to former Conservative leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. More from Benedict Spence. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's coming up to 10:36. Let's get straight to our next guest, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, Conservative MP, former leader of the Conservative Party, who joins us to discuss a lot of the big stories of the day. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry, I've got to go straight in with this extraordinary story. We were getting all our calls on this morning. A Palestinian family in Gaza, a mum and dad and 4 kids. They'd been granted the right to live in Britain after applying through the scheme for Ukrainian refugees, literally called the Ukraine Family Scheme. You'd think there was a clue in the name, wouldn't you? And they'd been allowed, after appeal to the upper tier tribunal, of course, that they could basically come to this country because of exceptional circumstances that their home has been bombed in Gaza. Given that that would apply to probably 1.8 million Palestinians in Gaza, that could open the floodgates. What's your reaction to that?
That's astonishment. I mean, here we go again, that judges are able to stretch the meaning of words. Yeah. So the word Ukraine, the name of... strangely, a country called Ukraine, invaded by the Russians. This program was for them and their moment of dire need, and many have, in the UK at the moment, welcomed and looked after by good, decent British citizens. So how he manages to mix up Ukraine and Gaza is completely beyond me. The reality is they just reinterpret it, and they always reach for the Convention of Human Rights, which tops everything. Yeah, and it's Article 8. This is the right to a family life under the European Convention of Human Rights. But what's extraordinary, the family life is that either the mother or the father, I'm not sure which, they've got a relative who is a British citizen, you've got a brother who lives here. They haven't seen him in 17 years, but apparently they're very close, Ian. They're very, very close. And they haven't seen him, but they've got a right. Since when do we have a family life to be with our siblings on the other side of the world? Well, this whole nonsense over, and Article 8 is one of the most ridiculously overused and overinterpreted articles in the concept of standing up for people's human rights. We all want to stand up for their human rights, to protect them, but not to say to them, look, you can come over here under a scheme that was never designed for you in the first place, but designed very specifically, and it couldn't be more specific in the naming of the country. That it was for you. But this is really, I think we're heading for a massive clash now over the convention. It just seems to me progressively, almost day by day, what has happened is Parliament that used to be known as the sovereign leader of the United Kingdom, it was sovereign, is no longer sovereign. It has a Supreme Court set up in a hurry by Tony Blair, which second-guesses parliamentary decisions now, and it has almost any Tom, Dick and Harry masquerading as a judge, going around the place, being able to overturn almost anything that the government does.
But isn't the problem not just the European Court of Human Rights or the European Convention of Human Rights or any other international body? The problem is our own activist judges who are, I mean, not interpreting, they are misinterpreting this legislation. All of this legislation about the right to a family life and things like that, well, I mean, you could use that to stop someone going to jail. We had the Pakistani paedophile, part of a grooming gang, trying to groom 3 young girls. Not allowed to live with his own children because he's a risk to them, but apparently it would be damaging to his right to a family life for him to be sent back to Pakistan because he'd be separated from his kids, and that would be damaging for them. I mean, these things are being wildly overinterpreted when actually there are clauses in those articles making it very clear, except, where there is a risk to, to the public, national security, safety. Well, clearly having paedophiles in the country or foreigners who've been convicted isn't a good thing. Another case of an Albanian, 250 grand's worth of cash from ill-gotten gains, gone to prison, able to stay in the country because apparently he thinks his kid won't like foreign chicken nuggets. Don't know whether his kid has ever had foreign chicken nuggets, but this stuff is all laughable. And we think it's like a silly one-off. It's not. It's day in, day out. This stuff is happening. And it is our own British, homegrown, home-trained, home-appointed lawyers and judges who are allowing this to happen. We need a root and branch clear out of these people. Doge style, Trump style.
Well, I get the point you're making, but you clear out one lot, you'll end up with another. In a way, it's not what's in their head, it's what's in their hand. And so, therefore, the tool that they can use is always vaguely drafted, open legislation. And in this case, it is in the convention. that article is way, way too generous and way, way too ill-defined. So the key thing here is, if you're going to have protection for human rights, they really should be done here in the UK, but overall they should reflect the nature of the UK, not just a general statement. And so the problem is, even if you got rid of every judge tomorrow, and bear in mind, this is a government that's employed Hermer, who is
Lord Hermer, the Attorney General,
he's about as anti-British as possible, and parades his anti-Britishness on a scale which is almost unbelievable.
He sort of, give away the Chagos Islands. I mean, let's get some money for
He's
Jerry
called
Adams.
The British Empire a disgrace. It was all about chastising various people. It didn't give anything to anybody. I mean, just the whole thing is complete nonsense. But so they're always going to be around people who have a political agenda to their legal position. But that notwithstanding, if you clear them all out tomorrow, you just fill the same space. My key question is, what are the tools that they use that need to be rectified by government? And I have to say, this government is going to face this rather quickly, I think.
Well, and the funny thing is, of course, that actually this is going to keep coming back and biting them in the backside, is it not? I mean, we've got announced that, people who arrive on a dangerous journey, on a boat, under a lorry, or the like, they apply for refugees status here, they'll never be, basically, unless there are exceptional circumstances, they will typically not be allowed to get British citizenship. Yeah, I'm sure some of them will. But also that extraordinary revelation yesterday that a deportation flight, which was filmed by the Home Office as a big, oh, look, aren't we being tough on deportations? There was a private jet, went back to Albania, at an estimated cost of £1 million. They carried 220 passengers, 47 Albanian legal migrants and convicted criminals to their home country. Each one cost 22 grand. And we know, actually, a lot of the cases when there are deportations, they're actually voluntary. And we're giving them 3 grand to resell. By the way, they just spend that back at home and then they just come back again and start again. And, I mean, it's an absolute joke, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's exactly the point. I mean, here's the government banging on about the Rwanda scheme, which was structural in one sense because it sent people away from their home to a place that was even further away than the place that they started from, which would have been a major deterrent. There's no question about it. I think it would have been. But they complained there was too much money spent. And now what they're doing is having to throw money at projects, very short term. By the way, we already had an arrangement with the Albanian government before the last government left office. There's nothing new about Albanians going back to Albania. But this indicates how desperate the government is. They know very well their programme, apparently cracking down on the gangs, led by a man apparently who doesn't even live in the United Kingdom, who lives over in Finland. I mean, when I saw that,
I wanted to come to that.
Joke going on in the newspaper.
There was confirmation hearing in front of MPs yesterday. John Tuckett, independent chief inspector of borders and immigration, but 130 grand a year. Thank you very much. And he's hinted he'd like to work part-time from home, and his home is in Finland. I mean, as you say, you can't make this stuff up. This is stuff. If this was in, Yes, Prime Minister, or the thick of it, you'd go, oh, that's a bit far-fetched. This is how we live now. This is what we're supposed to put up with now.
Well, there's even room, though, even under the normal criticism that we would make of the way we live, when you find a bloke living in Finland who is going to run your anti-border policy here in the UK, there is a moment when you look at this and think to yourself, I'm not going to say it exactly, but they're taking something out of me, I have to say.
They're definitely taking something, it has to be said. Can I ask you just finally, a big story in the last couple of days, of course, is these changes to the assisted dying bill, that one of the biggest safeguards in that bill from the private member's bill from Labour MP Kim Leadbeater was to have a High Court judge have the final say on whether or not in each individual case someone should be granted assisted dying. Lots of other safeguards. Now, I'm somebody who's long thought that we should have assisted dying. I don't think just for terminally ill people, as this bill allows. I would think for people who in long-term physical agony. I think it's a personally. I know lots of people differ. I think it's a fundamental human right. But I would certainly want huge safeguards against people being pressured or feeling like they had to because they didn't have access to care at the end of their life, etc. To vote to choose this. They've now basically thrown that measure out to say it will be a board with probably a lawyer, maybe a social worker, a psychiatrist, rather than a High Court judge, because there simply aren't enough High Court judge appointments facing court for there to actually oversee this. You've always voted against assisted dying of any sort, and every time there has been a vote. What do you make of this change that has just been sort of just ripped out of this bill despite that being a measure that was a key safeguard in the original bill?
Well, one of the concerns I had all along from this bill was it a private member's bill. This is a very complex and hugely vital case. Even if you disagree or agree with it, you'll want to make sure that the right checks are in place. We don't end up in, like some countries, where basically, in Canada at the moment, you sort of get a slip in the sent to you if you moaned or complained about your disability equipment or something, and there have been cases like that. So what's wrong with this is that Kim Leadbeater, I have a lot of time for, but she gets to pick the whole of who's in the committee. And one of the big things at the beginning was the committee is genuinely not, I think, balanced. Yeah. And the evidence session that's taken place is far from balanced.
Yeah, and eminent people from eminent bodies that clearly have a useful contribution have been barred from making any statements.
And it's not as though they don't have time, because they do. There is no time limit on this. And they should take the widest information possible. So what I was surprised about was that in the middle of the committee stage, not even when it gets back to the House of Commons, there's been a major change to the way it was run. And there were lots of people in the Commons on that evening that were debating this that said they had real reservations, but they were going to vote for the bill to progress because they wanted to test all of this out. And one of those was how strong the protections were. Yeah. Well, of course, now they'll be looking at this, having seen these protections stripped away. By the way, it's not just they're replacing judges with others who may have some qualifications. It's that these others will be volunteers.
Yeah, and by definition, there'll be people who are therefore signed up. I know that's my concern. And I say that's someone who is in favour of this. And I think now I would vote against it, usually. Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, we'll have to leave it there. Covered a lot of ground there. Former Conservative Party leader, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, thank you. Benedict Spence, on the assisted dying bill, we're going to talk about it a bit later, but where are you on this?
I mean, I was opposed to it beforehand, and I issued,
even more opposed to it now.
Yeah, and the whole slippery slope thing, at the very least, I thought they'd wait until the legislation was in place before starting the backsliding. But they're not even doing that.
No, I mean, I have to say, I think Kim Leadbeater's actions over this has been absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgraceful. They really have completely lost my support. And I'm someone, again, I've been in favour of this as a dying all my life. I really have. For some people in particular, but there we go. Just saying.
Sorry, I was late.
10:47 is time. Up next, going to talk about what is going on in America. And oh my God, it gives you hope. If only we had a government like that here. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Because at the end of the day, apparently it says that now 15% of the total number of people behind bars are people who have been sent back in after they've been released. So there's clearly a problem, and you've always said this, Vanessa, with what happens when they're in there as well, because what they're not being encouraged to do is figure out how to stay away.
I can't say this enough. The bigger picture is how our prison system has been run into and our justice system for that matter, has been run into the ground.
Yeah, right.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go right now to Greg Swenson. He's chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Very, very good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning, Julia.
Thanks so much for joining us. I have to say, I've been looking with awe and wonder and lots of jealousy at what's been going on in the States with the announcements from Donald Trump and Elon Musk tackling waste and frankly corruption in American government. We've got sort of DOGE staff, Department of Government Efficiency staff led by Elon Musk, sort of going into the Department of Education, making huge savings. We've got this rooting out of the highest paid corrupt bureaucrats. Like, hold on a minute, how come you live in a house worth millions when you haven't been paid anything like that? Where have you got your money from? And also, I think the most extraordinary story that Elon Musk was talking about in the White House yesterday, you know, with his little son sitting on his shoulders, explaining how federal employees' retirement documents all have to be filed in basically a sort of an underground mine shaft in paper manila envelopes for the whole of the federal employees in somewhere in one state. And basically that limits the amount of people who can retire in any one time, because if the lift shaft breaks, everything gets slowed down. It was mind-blowing stuff, but that's the reality they're dealing with. Tell us what you make of it all.
It really is, Julia, and I totally agree with you. There's a lot of envy in the UK now that, you know, we wish we had that kind of government here, or at least the current government in the US. And it also demonstrates just how corrupt the Biden administration was. You know, it really was rotten to the core.
Well, no, come on. This stuff has been going on for years. And it was going on when Trump was president as well, and Obama and Clinton.
So, Julia, it's generational for sure. But I think it was alarmingly worse during the Biden years, because you had absolutely reckless spending and no accountability, and they were just throwing money around. So there's $8 trillion in new debt. So yeah, it has to be done. You know, it's disruptive, sure, it's provocative, but it really needs to be done. I thought Elon made a great comment. He said this isn't optional; it's essential.
Well, absolutely. And again, people often talk about how rich America is. By the way, apologies, there's a bit of sound behind our guest, Greg Swenson, but it's not his fault. Apologies for the sound in the background there. But it is absolutely fascinating, though. You know, so people think America's a really rich country. Well, it is. It's actually trillions and trillions in debt. Money is being spent not just at home, but overseas in huge amounts. We've got a load of waste here. I think we're just starting to uncover some of the extraordinary levels of waste in this country. We saw it, I mean, on an exploded level when we talk about PPE during COVID, and huge amounts of money wasted there, and the fraud and the like. But it's on an exponentially bigger scale in America, because there's so much money handed out. And I mean, just go through some of the things they found, for instance, in the Department of Education, because by all accounts, the very woke Department of Education, apparently everyone was in meltdown. Everyone with blue hair was upset when these Elon Musk folk turned up to have a look at what they were spending money on. Yeah,
that department in particular, I think that basically the goal is to shut it down. Education should be done at the state and local level. The Department of Education was established in the late 70s, really to just monitor and maybe add a little sort of, credibility to education. It was a complete and utter joke from the beginning, but it's also turned into this absolute monster of government waste. And it's also detrimental to education. It's controlled by the teachers' unions. So they're making public education worse, and they're doing everything they can to stop private education or school choice.
I mean, American state schools, public schools are absolutely dire. And they're also, I mean, they've been, basically swamped with the wokery, even worse than our own schools here in the UK have been, in terms of what the horrific stuff that children are being taught and the propaganda they're getting. I mean, it's definitely something to be dealt with. But in terms of the amount of savings that Elon Musk can make, every time we hear an announcement about what they're going to do, we're going to stop this, we're going to stop that, we're going to sack these federal employees. Like the last Thursday, there was this deadline for federal employees: turn up to work. You're not working from home anymore. 2 million of you turn up, or you're sacked. Will consider you to have decided to resign from your job. That was held, delayed by a judge. What's happening there? Because it does seem you've got the same problem in America as we've had in the UK, which is that actually you've got activist judges stopping the executive getting stuff done.
Yeah, they're litigating from the bench, which is not what they're supposed to be doing, obviously. And so they are activist judges. But, those are sort of the local district judges. They're all, people of the left. I'm being kind, but most of them are radical progressives. And so you'll see that kind of pushback, but it won't last, because as it goes higher up in the courts, when it gets to the Supreme Court, if any of these things do, there's clearly constitutional support for this stuff. So the judges I think will push back. Of course, the unions.
Donald Trump does have the power as executive. I mean, but Congress controls the purse strings. So a lot of this stuff, he may need to push this through Congress, where he has got a majority in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. But it may only be for 2 years. He's got to get a lot of legislation through very quickly.
He has to, and I think he will. At least for 2 years we have all three branches, and that's important. And I actually prefer going through Congress rather than executive actions, because they can't be reversed by the next president. So I think that's obviously something. I think now the hard work starts, which is getting bills through Congress. But everything that he's done, he's got really great support from the people. It's polling. The whole Elon Musk Doge thing is polling in the 60s.
Yeah,
and that never happens.
So people who voted Democrat.
50-50 world.
Yeah, people who voted Democrat are supporters. Well, I want it to succeed, because I want him to come over when he's sorted out America and come over and sort us out as well. Greg Swenson, thank you so much for joining us, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK. Benedict Spence, watching this. I'm not going to support everything that Donald Trump does or says. I've made that very clear. Even though I'd have voted for him, but I am loving this stuff. But Americans, the country. The only reason it's not bankrupt is because the dollar is still, the leading currency in the world. They are trillions and trillions and trillions in debt. They've got to stop spending money on nonsense.
They are, and it's lovely to be able to kid yourself that you can keep spending that amount of money, but sooner or later people do, I think, want to see responsibility in government. And also, actually, to pick up on what Greg Swenson was saying, I do think the tail end of the Biden administration, people did begin to get, even lifelong Democrats began to look at the pardons, for instance, the preemptive pardons, and think, hang on, what is going on here? This is not, in fact, what happens. Usually there's a couple of people, as you go, who've already been convicted, maybe the odd person here or there. There were far too much of that going on. And so I do think that there's a sense of, look, OK, maybe Trump, because he is this polarising figure, maybe he can be the one that gets away with being able to do this in a way that maybe a Democrat wouldn't be able to.
He does crucially have the mandate.
He does have the mandate.
He said he wanted to do this. He was voted in. He has the mandate, and it's got popular. But again, there are going to be an awful lot of people who are going to be out of jobs. There are going to be people, who I know, but
they're not real jobs.
They're not real jobs. This is the thing. When everything carries on functioning, indeed functions better. But we could do this here.
It's a version of universal basic income, just depending on whether you went to the right college or not. But we could do this here.
We should do this here. But I will vote for a party that promises to do this here.
I'm sorry, we had somebody who said that they were going to do it, but he hitched his wagon to Boris Johnson as the method for doing it. So that was always going to end in disaster.
I had hopes of Dominic Cummings, but again, I think Elon Musk does it with a little bit more charm. And they've also got more direct power.
He also hires very smart people to do it.
Also, here's the thing: in Whitehall, the Prime Minister can't even decide who works in Whitehall, and can't even get them back in the office, for goodness' sake. Anyway, more coming up, more from Benedict Spence, more from you, lots more calls coming in. 0344 499 1000. Do stay calling. Thanks so much.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time.
Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. The shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, Oivamo slides it in. An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Appreciate you joining me. Lots to talk about today, and whether you are listening on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or on your connected device, it's great to have your company. Also the company of Benedict Spence. He's a Conservative commentator. He's in a bit of a mood because he was stuck on a train this morning. So if you want to call in and try and cheer him up, should we make that our phone in today? Call in and cheer Benedict Spence up with feel good Wednesday moods.
What if I start snapping at members of the public? I don't think that's good.
We don't have any members of the public. They're our family. Anyway, if you want to put those call-ins, that would be highly amusing for me. Anyway, let's talk about the important stories of the day, because this is both unbelievable, mind-boggling, infuriating, laughable, you name it, it is everything. A Palestinian family living in Gaza, mum, dad, 4 kids. They have been granted the right to live in the UK after applying through a scheme meant for Ukrainian refugees. The clue that it was meant for Ukrainian refugees is evident in the fact that the scheme they applied under was called the Ukraine Family Scheme. I know, there definitely is a clue in that name, isn't there? But it was obviously some lawyers, obviously paid for by you and me, decided that was a good idea for them to apply for that scheme, even though, of course, it was only for people coming from Ukraine. And they have argued that they have a right under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights to a family life. What is that family life? Well, to be with either the mum's or the dad's brother. He came to this country, way back when, the best part of 2 decades ago, and he's got British citizenship. Because we know how easy it is to get British citizenship now, so they think they've got a right to come here. And a lower-tier tribunal judge said, yeah, you don't, actually. An upper-tier tribunal judge, after it was appealed, said that they did have the right. He said it was exceptional circumstances because their home in Gaza had been bombed. Except in Gaza, that's not an exceptional circumstance, is it? It's actually the situation for the vast majority of families in Gaza. That entire strip of land has been turned to rubble. So exactly how many of the 1.8 million Gazan Palestinians are we meant to take under the Ukrainian Family Scheme? Does this open the floodgates? Is this just the madness of activists, judges and lawyers? Do we need to put a stop to this? What is the government going to do? And how do we put a stop to it when we've still got the European Convention of Human Rights basically enshrined in our own laws in the Human Rights Act and being not interpreted, outrageously, blatantly misinterpreted by activist judges who think that they know better than our elected representatives and think that for some reason this country owes some sort of debt to a family of Gazans living on the other side of the world. It's utterly bizarre. Jordan doesn't want these people. Egypt doesn't want these people. Saudi Arabia don't want these people. None of the countries in the Middle East, the Arab leaders who talk so much about the Palestinian cause, none of them want to offer homes, places to live to the people of Gaza. Why not? Why not? Because this is a highly, highly indoctrinated, propagandised, extremist population. Not everyone. I'm sure there are some lovely Palestinians living in Gaza. But for the last God knows how many decades, they have basically been raised on a diet of death and destruction. Their entire raison d'etre, they are told in their own school books, is to basically be a suicide bomber and kill as many Jews and destroy Israel. Do we really think that those are people who would make a good contribution to British life, to British culture, who would assimilate, who would integrate and be a boon to our country? I'm going to play the odds here and say, I'm not sure they will. Does that make me a bigot? Sorry about that. Does that make me, I don't know, a ziohag? That's what I'm called most days on Twitter as well. Well, maybe it does. Maybe I just think that British people should be put first. I know, I'm old-fashioned like that. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking more about assisted dying, that massive change about the High Court judge that's been dropped from that bill, whether that affects everything. We're going to talk about the next Borders Watchdog chief who plans to work part-time from his home in Finland, I kid you not, and also about a dozen left-wing Labour MPs, are there any other kind, pushing ministers to introduce a 4-day working week as part of the government's overhaul of workers' rights. I don't know why they're pushing for it. The rate we're going, we're going to have blackouts. We're going to be 1970 style 3-day week by the end of this Labour term in office. So don't worry, guys, you're going to get what you wished for. Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about, but in particular, Palestinian family from Gaza being granted the right to live here in Britain. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Tell us your reaction to that story. You can text on 87222. You can get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1, standard network rate message. Let's get the thoughts right now of Benedict Spence, the Conservative commentator, as I said, in a bit of a mood today. Not as much of a mood as I think the people are in Britain who are going to be going, I wonder where these Palestinian migrants are going to live, who've been educated and told and ruled by Hamas for years, telling them their main aim in life is to kill the infidel. Yeah. Because I think there's a lot of infidels here in the UK. I mean, I'm among them.
Are any of these people railway engineers? I'd be prepared to make an exception.
Probably. No, I mean, either the mother or the father is definitely a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist. That's normally
I don't need
the case.
a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist. I'd just like basic public services to work. But there shouldn't... Let's be very clear here. It actually doesn't matter where they come from in the world. Britain does not owe a livelihood to all and sundry of humanity just because their own countries have collapsed. We can do what we can to support our allies and indeed, other countries as well, to get themselves stable. But at some point, Western countries have to turn around and stop feeling guilty about what may or may not have happened during empire, most of which is not in fact true.
Yeah. Your country's a hellhole because of the people who rule you, not our problem. It is
not the sins of the white man exclusively what his ancestors did however many hundred years ago. At some point, we have to turn around to these countries and say, why are you incapable of running a civilized society? And if you're incapable of doing that, what is there to recommend you coming to ours?
Exactly.
That is the key thing. Now, when it comes to women and children fleeing a war or something like that, that's very different, especially given that half of them would like to go, well, all of them would like to go back. When the men stay and they try to fight, they try to get rid of an extremist ideology, when they try to rebuild something, we can all sit here and go, out of the goodness of our hearts, children, yes, fine, look after them, whilst their fathers. But if your society is in fact engaged in a millennia-long blood feud with people you don't like, and your response is to then get upset when you lose because you keep going to war with the bigger, stronger country, which, by the way, is the more civilized of the two, I think there needs to be a real lack of sympathy for those people. At some point, intelligent life is meant to learn from its mistakes. Germany had to learn.
Exactly.
Japan had to learn.
But
why do these people not?
But is this family, they've got a long history of basically trying to oust Hamas and promote good relations with their neighbours. I somehow doubt it.
I'm sure
I
there
imagine
are
it'd be
a few
rather
people
dangerous.
like
Yes,
that,
I imagine it'd be rather dangerous to do so.
Yeah.
I don't think it's our problem.
No.
I just don't think it's our problem. I think we've got enough problems here already, and we've imported an awful lot of it. And I just think it's really, really simple. Unless you can prove you are going to benefit the people already here, then I'm afraid you don't get to come here.
I mean, ill-educated people will shout and scream about the Balfour Declaration, never having read it or knowing what it is. It's the United Nations that set up the state of it, that passed, that voted democratically to say, actually, yes, these people are allowed to have their own country. Why it is, actually, because this is the thing, you'll say that it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's not our problem. But there are a lot of people who want to make it our problem. We haven't been in that part of the world. We haven't been a power in almost a century that's worth sort of talking about, if we're being completely honest. And yet somehow it is going to be made our problem. And the most toxic thing is, it's people at the top of our own society who wring their hands and go, well, it is our problem and we have to.
Well, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, I mean, again, hiring every human rights lawyer, all his mates. We've got, Attorney General Lord Hermer, again, I mean, got some very, very questionable views about Britain's past and present, handing over Chagos Islands to Mauritius, who've got no legal claim to it whatsoever. Absolute load of abject nonsense. And by the way, one of the judges, it's fascinating, one of the judges involved in the ruling that the Mauritians bizarrely have a claim to the Chagos Islands is actually someone who's defended Russia in the past, a Chinese judge. I mean, give me a break. Again, it's the same when we have these rulings about wars from the United Nations Security Council and these votes. You think, I'm sorry, anything that China or Russia has a view on, not caring about.
But even forget China or Russia. At least China or Russia are major players. What has a Nicaraguan or Somali judge got to do with us?
Or South African. I mean, again, I don't sort out your own country.
The international community. If you line them all up, you'd say, I don't want to live in 90% of those countries. But when they all get together in a club, we're supposed to take them seriously.
And by the way, if you want to know why FIFA and organisations like that are completely corrupt, because you got one member, one vote. How's that working, everybody? There's a clue to an awful lot of the world are basically banana republics and operate on a level of corruption and incompetence. I mean, we think our lot are bad. Oh my God! But here's the thing: we've got an activist foreign secretary, David Lammy. He's talked about us paying reparations to Caribbean
member
countries.
For the Caribbean.
Well, exactly. I mean, last I looked, David Lammy, you're as British as I am, and yet for some reason you think you're Caribbean. No, I'm sorry, you're British, mate. I hate to break it to you, but this is the thing. I just find we've got these activists in power. How bad is this going to get? Because look, a lawyer would have suggested to this family, hey, why don't you apply under this Ukraine scheme? This idiot judge who happens to be the son of an colleague of mine at Guardian, who's a very activist, lefty campaigner, and doesn't necessarily mean he has the same views, but I would suggest from this ruling he does. We know that these personal inputs of these judges is definitely going into these things, these interpretations. This isn't just one family. There is no reason on this that we wouldn't be having 200,000 or 300,000 people from Gaza turning up on our shores making the same claim.
Of course.
No reason at all.
Of course, and that's the point, is that it's an interpretation of laws that under which we used to have you were able to deport people. Now is just the sense of actually all and sundry can come in because they've got a sob story. But I mean, you were talking about David Lammy that's just there. He's not the worst example. The worst example is north of the border. It's the Scottish National Party, who position themselves as if Scotland are the great victims of British imperialism. They were at the forefront of going out, but they talk about themselves as a colony. And we get that in Wales increasingly as well. People talk about, we were colonised as well. Everybody's a victim. And of course, everybody's a victim. Everybody's therefore out with their hands asking for things. It's not sustainable. It's a complete inversion of history. It's a complete lie. But you base a society on that, everybody will be on the take, not just from here, but across the world.
Absolutely. And you wonder again, that we talked about on the show yesterday, and you get all these youngsters who aren't proud of their country, wouldn't fight for it, think it's racist. It's like, well, what a surprise if that's what you tell them. Let's talk about, just sticking with the Middle East just briefly, Donald Trump doubling down on this Saturday noon deadline for Hamas to release all the hostages. Benjamin Netanyahu now saying, well, they all come out, or the ceasefire is over. I mean, at the end of the day, if Hamas refused to release the 3 hostages, hostages, and it seems to be a little bit up in the air about whether they mean 3 or all the hostages. I don't think they've got all the hostages to actually release. I worry that most of them aren't alive. I mean, the majority of them are no longer alive, and that's why they're delaying it. Hamas tried to play a little game. They wanted to play a little game with the ceasefire. Oh, well, that's back. That's, gone back on you rather badly, hasn't it? If they don't, then Hamas would have reneged on the ceasefire terms, and Netanyahu and the IDF would be totally entitled to go back in. But the reality is, you haven't got anything over Hamas because Hamas don't care 2 figs about the Palestinian people in Gaza. I don't want them to come here. I also don't want them to die in Gaza.
I think I would err on the side of actually there's not many hostages who are still alive, and I would base that actually on the state of some of the hostages that have been.
Saturday was just horrific.
They are coming out looking like...
They did get goodie bags, though, Benedict. They did. As Yvonne Ridley pointed out, they got goodie bags.
Yes, they weren't told that their relatives had been slaughtered and were made to say in front of the whole world that they were looking forward to, but they got a party bag. They got some, little rolls and some sweeties and things like that. Lovely. No, I mean, this isn't going to end with a ceasefire. This is going to end, I'm afraid to say, how most wars that resolve themselves do end, and that is one side crushing the other. That means a lot more people are probably going to die. I know that this is so strange. We in the West have forgotten how wars work.
I hear again and again. Radio 4 constantly have experts on saying, of course, all wars, they don't even say most, all wars end with negotiations.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. That's literally not how all wars, or even most wars end.
Do people not know how many German civilians, forget all the soldiers, how many German civilians died in the Second World War? The destruction that was visited.
How many Japanese civilians?
We didn't, but we literally dropped the weapons of mass destruction on them. Wars end when one side batters the other into submission, and negotiations often is simply, it's a surrender document.
Yes.
It is some French people on one side and Germans in a railway carriage going, these are the terms of surrender. I'm sorry you lost, but that's how it is.
But this is the thing, the so-called experts don't even understand some basic... I mean, this is GCSE history stuff.
Did Saddam Hussein negotiate his own defeat? I don't remember that happening.
It is
but
quite...
it must have happened. The lawyers say
and Gaddafi from that tunnel as he was dragged out. It's quite bizarre, isn't it? I just want to also talk to you about an announcement yesterday that we had in a court that the Metropolitan Police, when they carry out vetting, re-vetting of officers, as they started to do a year or two ago, after we just had some extraordinary cases, Wayne Couzens and others, horrific, violent criminal acts by serving police officers. Big investigation of those officers. We discovered a load of them hadn't been vetted properly, or literally been interviewed on Zoom and the like. And then we discovered a lot of them had actually been accused of crimes, nothing had been done. They re-vetted a whole load of people and wanted to sack them. Extraordinarily, a police officer able to take them to court, basically saying, well, you can't sack me. And a court has ruled that even if people now fail vetting, they can't be sacked. Again, the courts are insane.
Just think, what is it? I mean, not only are we at a stage where police officers don't arrest people who actually break the law, when they're found to have failed their own standards, they can't get rid of them. So we've got police officers who could be dangerous criminals, not going out to arrest people who are dangerous criminals. It's a wonderful system, isn't it? And you struggle to see why it is that great swathes of society are actually grinding to a halt. I can't possibly imagine why that is. It's not like the actual administration of violence on behalf of the state doesn't work because it's filled with people who are abusing it and also don't act on it. I mean, that's bread and butter stuff. That's what is the point of the state? Protect your borders, uphold the law. We don't do either of those things. Why should we expect anything else to work?
It's kind of soul-destroying, isn't it? I mean, it really is.
Why do you think I'm so morose all the time?
You are.
Yeah, I see the evidence that's in front of me, and I kind of go, well, it's nice that in the United States they've elected somebody who is now trying... Whatever you think, he's certainly trying to do some very fundamental things.
Yeah, he's trying to do something.
Yeah, in this country, we just go, oh, maybe we give away an island or two, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, then we can assuage ourselves. I just think all these people need to go and join like a monastery if they want to just sort of hit themselves over the head with
bring back the monastery.
Well, if that's what they... But I've just managed to find it finally. I just want to find this note on another story which involves our jail crisis. Of course, we've got massively overcrowded jails. Another crisis we've just walked into. And apparently one of the big issues is that we've got prisoners who get released from jail. Obviously, I would say most of them far too early. And then they're being sent back to jail because the Chief Inspector of Probation, this is Martin Jones, he says, because it's the easiest thing to do. But these are people who have broken the terms, either committing a crime or in most cases just not fulfilling the terms of their probation. So, for instance, turning up to appointments repeatedly, failing to turn up and then being sent back to jail. Now, this actually seems to be a problem. Now, the extraordinary is the campaigners who are sort of, talking about this are saying, well, the solution to this is not to send people to jail for short terms and not to recall them.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point. I mean, that's literally, it's like, for instance, you know, if you don't fulfil your community sentence, if we all think those work, which I'm not entirely sure they do, then you should go to jail, because that's the deal. If you don't turn up, you go to jail.
Yeah.
I mean, it is extraordinary. Again, the people who are involved in the top level of our criminal justice system don't get it.
Yeah,
they don't get it.
No concept of carrot and stick approach as to how human behaviour actually works.
Yeah, but also, if someone is just too drunk or out their head on drugs to turn up to their probation meeting, well...
Oh, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. They're just a scam.
Well, what should we do with them at that point?
Well, you wouldn't want to go and touch them and drag them to prison. You might get your hands dirty.
They're mostly sitting outside my local tube station, as far as I can tell.
This is one of the things about living in a major city in the UK now, is how noticeable it is that there are people who are homeless, on drugs, or mentally ill, who are just free to roam the streets. And you see the same people, if you walk past the same stuff, they don't get moved on, they don't get taken away, they don't get given help, and they don't get arrested. They are just left to their own devices until something dreadful happens, which of course we've been talking about.
Either to them or by them.
About the Nottingham stabber, for instance, that example. And it's merciful that it doesn't happen on a much larger scale, but it is increasing. You can't move away from that fact that it's becoming more common. Yeah. To which the response is, oh, well, maybe knives are a little bit too sharp and we should blunt those. Rather than address the core issues, it's to fiddle around the edges so that you don't have to do the heavy lifting. Yeah, that's the attitude in this country.
Absolutely. It's another one of those happy Wednesdays.
And now for the weather. Light showers.
Have you thought of doing, children's parties?
I tell you what, children that were raised by me would have a much more realistic outlook, and therefore would build more, stronger societies, because they'd understand how the world works.
No, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. Anyway, we're going to move on. I want to hear from you. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 about anything we're talking about. If you'd like to offer to have Benedict's babies, whatever it is you want to do, but that would be weird. I don't think I should do that on air. But anyway, I want to particularly talk about this Palestinian family in Gaza who've been granted the right to live in Britain by applying through the... It just blows my mind, the Ukraine family scheme. You'd think there was a clue in the name. Could open the door basically to hundreds of thousands of people from Gaza coming here. Good idea, bad idea? Discuss. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
You know, and I know, and your viewers know, if this had been somebody from any other political party, it would have been Keir Starmer and the Labour Party who would have been leading the charge, saying they have to be shown the door.
Yeah, but it was just disdain for the voters generally. And I mean, that's the worst sort of result that Keir Starmer can have, because it led to people like me having conversations about, is this what they really think of us? Is this what they really think of you?
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just coming up to 11:25. Benedict Spencer's here. No offers yet to have your baby. So
Good. What a surprise.
I like public service broadcasting at its best. But we are talking about the extraordinary story about the Palestinian family in Gaza who have been granted the right to live in Britain, using extraordinarily the scheme for Ukrainian refugees, for women and children fleeing the Russian invasion. This could open the floodgates to thousands more Gazan refugees. I wonder what your thoughts are. 0344 499 1000. I'm going to read a couple of actually the texts and the tweets we've got in a couple of moments about that. But let's go to the phone lines first. Daniel is in Epsom. Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Julia, Benedict, can it actually get any worse?
Oh, mate.
Oh, buddy, it can always get worse.
Keir Starmer's PM, absolutely.
I mean, the idealist socialists are destroying the country before our eyes, and we can't do anything for 4 years. I mean, I just can't believe what's going on.
Well, no, to be fair, I mean, this won't have been, this will be a tribunal, judge. It's not the government making this decision. But again, the abject failure of governments, Tories and Labour, to stop this, lawyer, judge-led activism and disinterpretation of human rights laws, they're all to blame.
Yeah, but overall, the governing classes, the judges, they're not doing what the majority of British people want them to do, irrespective of...
Well, not just that, Daniel. They're not actually obeying the letter of the law. They're completely, outrageously misinterpreting the actual law and ignoring basic things like the rights of British people to safety and security.
Yeah, but they don't care about the white, middle and working class people in this country. They don't care about our traditions and our heritage. We are bottom of a very long list in our own country. I mean, if you've currently got 50,000 people on the Islamic terror watch list, and you allow 1 million people in from Palestine, many of which will be Hamas wolves dressed as sheep, do you think that number will go up or down? Do you think more British women will get targeted in sexual attacks and rapes? Will that number go up or down? Do you think the decline in our society in general will go up or down? We all know what way all of those three factors are going to go. When it comes to immigration, I'd love a government that attracts the brightest and the best with the most skills and the most money that will enhance our society.
Absolutely. But by the way, also, the people who are going to be most harmed, actually, it's ordinary, moderate Muslims living their life here, getting on, who've come, families, heritage, whether lived here for years or they've come here to make a new life, to not live under extremist Islamist rule, to make their life here. They're the ones who are going to be most at risk, most intimidated by bringing over extremists. I mean, that's the reality. We've got entirely indoctrinated people who've been living under the rule of terrorists for the last God knows how many decades. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, Daniel?
Well, the thing is, Julia, that the more and more you allow mass immigration from the Islamic third world, or the third world in general, if they haven't got any money and got any skills, they're just going to go straight onto benefits, or they're going to be taking more out of the system than they'd ever put in. And the public, the majority of people out there do not want it and have never wanted it. Why do we have to put up with this time after time? I'm sick of it.
I'm with you. Daniel, I agree with you every single word, and I'm pretty sure so does the rest of the audience and most of the country, by the way, including most Labour voters, I think. Appreciate that. I'm going to go on, though. I want to get to Phil. He's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Phil.
Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Dominic. Good morning.
Benedict. Oh, he's going to get upset.
Happens every time.
Sorry, I do apologise. Benedict,
Who is Dominic?
I am sorry, sir. I agree with what your last caller was saying, Daniel. What do you folks think is the end game here? Because, we hear everything that's going on. Yes, we get it, we see it, we're annoyed with it. What is the end game?
Yeah.
What are they planning? It baffles me because, the woke, can we talk about the woke? Well, they're not the minority, they're the micro minority, the minuscule. Then we see everything that's going on in Palestine, immigration. What is the end game? What do they want?
Why would anyone think this was a good idea? What is the purpose? Well, I tell you what the end game is, Phil. Diversity is our strength.
Yes, but why?
I know. I mean,
why? I mean, is it control, Julia? I mean, I don't want to sound conspiratorial and all that sort of stuff. But do they want to control us? Because it sounds like they want to control what we can say, where we can go, and eventually what we can eat,
what we can think,
what we can spend our money on.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, most of it comes down to they just think we're all ghastly, ignorant bigots and fools, and they know better than us, and that's why they want, they're in favour of Brussels and the World Health Organisation and technocrats being in charge of everything. The only technocrat they don't want in charge of anything, by the way, is Elon Musk. Interestingly, Phil, thank you very much for that. Benedict or Dominic Spence, what do you?
I mean, it's not really about control. I don't think. If it was about control, they would, I think, spend a little bit more time on the police, if nothing else, in order to control things properly. And I just
wouldn't
like
mind a bit more control.
I do dislike it when people sort of start off by labelling it entirely as socialist or communist, because let's be very clear, China's economy is doing fantastically well. It's a communist state. Whatever you could say about Lenin, he built a lot of houses, a lot of factories, and Stalin took the military and national security and the police very seriously. Some might say a little too seriously. So, actually, it doesn't have to be communism or Marxism.
Yep.
I wouldn't even say it. It's something else. It's a sort of, it's a bureaucratic ideology. It's a sort of a mutation of liberalism.
No, it's a snobbery. It's a snobbery.
Well,
it's a patronising view that they know better than us, and if only we would just sign up to the programme.
I think just describing it as the blob is actually about as good, because it just seems to envelop. Could you put your finger necessarily on what ideology? No, it takes bits from different things and it just smothers things.
I just want to we're going to go to a break. We're going to talk about that the assisted dying bill in a minute, but I just want to throw another story in that's just been handed to me in the story. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has basically followed on from what Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has done in terms of getting rid of those portraits. He got rid of his portrait of Margaret Thatcher. I mean, you'd think the first woman Prime Minister, still voted one of the most popular Prime Ministers of all time in this country. I wasn't on the right then. I'd still vote for as one of the greatest Prime Ministers of our country. But he removed it. And Shakespeare, I mean, God forbid you wouldn't want any white culture or Tories. I mean, if she'd been a Labour Prime Minister, oh my God, that would be out of his will and pride of place, wouldn't it? Reeves has followed. First woman Chancellor. Remember they went on about that? Apparently she didn't like to have all these male predecessors, David Lloyd George, Benjamin Disraeli and others who were put in the artworks in her office. She's decided to replace those with abstract art depicting social distancing and COVID anxiety. I mean, they're not going for a feel-good vibe, are they? Not going for a feel-good vibe in the Treasury. I've been given the pictures. I'm not allowed to show you them because we haven't got the copyright on them. They're absolutely horrific.
Just imagine I took a crayon and I just did
they're
a
sort of
squiggle.
red and black sort of scribbles and of misery and pain and sadness. And that is what the Chancellor has decided to put on the walls. And I can't tell you how gloriously apt that is, given the pain and the misery that she's inflicting on this country. But doesn't that tell you everything? Everything. I can't wait. We're going to try and get permission to show you these pictures because they are so bad. But why is this government, why is both the Prime Minister and Minister, why are they so ashamed of our history, of our cultural heritage, of our past, our literary heritage, and even our political heritage? It is blowing my mind. Whenever you think they can't get more awful, they get more awful. 11:33 is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. 11:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. I'm delighted to say, just after midday, going to welcome the very fabulous, the very wonderful Sal Grover to the studio. If you've been paying attention to all these battles over women's rights versus trans ideology, Sal Grover is an absolute hero. She's kind of like, you know, turf in chief in Australia, where she has been being the subject of a case that really not Tickle v Giggle. It all sounds very silly, but it basically involves some fundamental rights of women to have their own spaces, and she is just, you know, the latest woman who's just standing up to the madness. Well, it looks like she's now got the backing of one J.K. Rowling, who has very deep pockets to help fight a case that's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court in Australia to establish that actually men aren't women and can't become women. The fact that that needs to be stated in a Supreme Court case is a little bit worrying, but we'll talk to her about all of that. You do not want to miss that chat. It's coming up just after 12. Right now, let's turn our attention back to the assisted dying bill. The future of that bill is now in jeopardy, we're told, as many MPs who'd supported it at the second reading in the House of Commons on the basis a lot of the safeguards that were there are now saying they're wavering on support. As in the committee stage, the MP, the Labour backbench MP, who has actually brought this case, Kim Leadbeater, has basically completely backtracked, gone back on everything she has said before in terms of having lots of safeguards, including, crucially, this was vital for me, we're having a High Court judge basically making the final decision over whether someone should be given the right to die. Let's talk to Tom Hunt about that now. He's a former Conservative MP. He's now head of media at the Right to Life and a campaigner against this bill. Very, very good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us. Now, you and I come at this from different points of view. I've always been a supporter of assisted dying, and I was certainly in favour of this bill. My view, actually, early on was I thought the bill should go further. It shouldn't just be for people who are judged by doctors to believe to have only 6 months left to live, but people who are living with interminable pain and difficulty as a result of long-term injury or illness. I wanted to expand it, but it was always crucial to me that we had safeguards, because we have seen in many parts of the world, in America and elsewhere, where they have brought in assisted dying with supposedly strong safeguards, that actually it's been a very, very slippery slope. What do you make of the changes since this has gone to the committee stage and MPs have been discussing it, and these changes, particularly with the idea of a High Court judge having the final say, being thrown out?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm really angry about how this has been handled. I'm not angry that there's people who disagree with me on the principle. I mean, I think we're all coming at it from at a place of wanting to do our best for vulnerable people, yes, wanting to end and minimise suffering. So we're all coming at it from that place. That obviously doesn't make me angry. What makes me angry, though, is that the way Kim is handling this bill. She seems to be running it almost as a campaign to win, with all the associated trickery, stacking witness lists, stacking the membership to the committee, launching massive changes to the bill, 10 p.m. the evening before, line by line.
Yeah. And also massive changes which she had categorically denied only 2 weeks ago that she would do.
Yes, and of course at second reading we had, I think, over 60 MPs had actually cited that High Court safeguard as being crucial for their qualified support of second reading. So I think it's the committee sort of descended into farce. I think there's 35 clauses this bill committee needs to get through. They spent hours sitting yesterday and didn't even get through one clause. Yeah, doesn't very, very well, does it? It doesn't.
But there isn't, I've got to say, there isn't a time limit. We were talking to Douglas Smith about this a bit earlier. There isn't a time limit on this bill. They can keep discussing it. I mean, I think of all the sort of bills you need to get right, you need to get something that involves literally the choice between life and death right. I don't think we should be hurrying that. There was lots of criticism when it actually had a debate ahead of the second reading, and it was, 5 hours? You know, MPs have spent longer, frankly, just, paying tribute to someone, retiring than they have on this assisted dying bill. But here's the thing. I'm with you. I think that everybody is coming at this from a good place, and they actually want to help people who are in this incredibly difficult, vulnerable situation. And a lot of it is it's a lot of people that come from a religious point of view or a moral, philosophical perspective about life and value of life and the like. And people are entitled to hold those views. But it is absolutely crucial that this bill, I mean, it would come back to Parliament, it would then to Commons, it would go through the Lords as well. But the key thing about the safeguards, as you say, 60 MPs or so actually cited this as a crucial aspect. And we're told, well, this is the only country in the world that's looked at this. But the problem has been identified that there'd be so many cases. We don't have enough High Court judges. We don't have enough retired High Court judges. We don't have enough time to know anywhere to put all these cases. It would completely clog up the family courts for decades to come. But that's a practical issue that needs to be resolved rather than throwing out that safeguard, isn't it, Rob? Because we have seen, and I say as someone who supports assisted dying in these certain circumstances, I am also equally concerned about this slippery slope, because we have seen in some American states and in many countries in Europe and elsewhere that actually, young women who've got anorexia have been allowed to assisted dying. People who are poor, or you just haven't got end-of-life palliative care, or people who just, feel like, well, I'm living on my own, I've got nothing. They're being a doctor is suggesting to them that, assisted dying may be the solution. And that is morally repugnant.
Well, I mean, I've looked at every single place where this has been introduced, and I think there's been horror stories. I mean, there's been degrees of horror stories. We've obviously seen Canada, where it now accounts for 1 in 20 deaths. Yeah. And the number of people who are going for this in Canada, it's socioeconomic reasons seem to be driving it, things like loneliness, feeling like a burden. Yeah. But interestingly, when it came to the Bill Committee, Kim Ledbetter invited 8 international witnesses. 8 international witnesses to give evidence to this committee. All 8 were on record for being in favour of the principle. Yeah. Interestingly, there was no one there from Canada. There was no one there from the Netherlands. So Professor Theo Boer, who's been at the forefront of this for 2 decades in the Netherlands, wanted to give evidence, not invited. Yeah. We had 6 people out of 8 from Australia and the States. Well, the Australian states have only just introduced it, so
they don't have a long experience. But also there were, I mean, as you said, the backing of the committee, and there are sort of just sort of conventions in the Commons in terms of the proportion of MPs who vote for a bill as opposed to a bill, and the selection of the committee that discusses it. But the guests and the guest witnesses and the people giving evidence, you would surely want to hear from people on both sides of the debate to make sure you got your bill right. She doesn't appear to want to do that. She's kind of, I've got to be honest, she's being rather dictatorial about this.
Well, that's what goes back to what I said at the start. That's what makes me angry, because we're all stakeholders in this debate. We all live in this country. We've all got loved ones who could be impacted by this. We could be impacted by it. We want it to be as safe as possible. I want to be.
My family, we actively support the principle.
But what is the justification for her having 6 out of 8 of international witnesses from Australia? Yeah. There's no justification for it. There's no defence for it. What's the justification for? And there is an argument that this whole High Court thing was a ruse to get it through second reading. We also look at the membership to the Bill Committee, and the most vocal, engaged supporters seem to be on it. And most of the opponents, I mean, there's some very good opponents on the Bill Committee, I must say. They've done some great speeches the last 2 days. But there's a lot of the opponents of sort of the softer opponents who didn't speak about it at second reading. Yeah. So I think that we can see this, but I think it's backfiring for Kim. Yep. I think people are seeing through this. I think they feel uncomfortable with the way she's handling it. For an issue of this magnitude, life and death, it should have been approached in a balanced and sober way. Yeah.
And a respectful way. But also crucially, as you say, it's a matter of life and death. But also, if you've got strong arguments, you don't need to shut down the other side. You debate with them and you win your argument.
Well, surely, Kim's saying that Canada is, not what we want in the UK. But of course, Canada is a similar country with a similar parliamentary legal system that introduced it in 2016. Things have clearly gone awry in Canada. Surely we want to understand why that was.
So we could prevent it from happening. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right. Well, and again, the fact that she's lost my support, I mean, I'm not an MP, I don't get a say, but I'm someone who's so principally in favour of this, I think is quite telling. And I wonder how many MPs will say, you know what, not this time round, you haven't got it right. And I hope that is the case, that they do that. But my heart goes out to people who desperately want this law to come into force. But it's got to be done right if it is going to happen. Tom Hunt from Right to Life, a campaigner against this bill, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you'll come on the show again. Benedict Spencer, you start philosophically, principally against this bill. But I mean, again, Kim Ledbetter, she's not, I mean, I've got to be honest, she's acting like a little Hitler on this one.
Yeah.
She really is. It's really really inappropriate for a backbench MP to do this.
It is, and the dishonesty around it and the intentions and also the arrogance of assuming that this will all just be fine if only we would just listen to her because she knows better and here are her
she's so
experts.
well qualified.
Yeah,
and she speaks out on all the big moral issues, doesn't she? Like that Batley Grammar School teacher in a constituency.
Well,
she's always spoken out about that, hasn't she? Oh, silly me, she never mentioned it.
Quite. This thing that is being just sort of forced down, you know, the process of making it become law. Honestly, it's not a priority in this country. It's a very difficult, complex moral question, but it's also a very difficult, complex, practical issue when you try to implement it. And you can take.
I think it is very much a priority for the
out.
people who want it and the families who want it.
I'm sorry, there are so many things that are priorities for so many people. It's a small number. Take the morality out of the question. What part of NHS or police or justice system processes at the moment makes anybody think we would get this right? We get so many basic things wrong.
True.
Why do we think, in our wisdom, that this would be any different?
Very fair point. 11:46 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Lots of calls still coming in. I'll try and get as many as I can in the next hour about this Palestinian family in Gaza granted the right to live in Britain after applying through the Ukraine family scheme. You'd think there was a clue in the name, wouldn't you? Up next, though, we're going to be talking to former Labour Party spokesman James Matthewson. I imagine this may come up. We're also going to be talking to him about why Labour MPs are pushing the government to push for a 4-day working week. Mind you, that's what they do, isn't it? Anyway, that's coming up. Don't forget, after 12, the brilliant, the wonderful turf-in-chief in Australia, Sal Grover, is going to be here to talk about her extraordinary case, Tickle v Giggle. Sounds ridiculous, sounds absurd. She is just fighting for the basic right of women to have their own spaces without men who claim, quite wrongly, that they are women, basically invading them. And we're going to talk to her after 12. She's going to be live in the studio. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
I think this human rights nonsense has just got completely out of control. And a bit like the legal profession, throughout history, every now and again, they get half a cut above themselves. And I think they're rather more than half a cut above themselves now. And you can't move without having a lawyer now. And that is basically clogging up the arteries of commerce, which has to stop.
Well, it is actually the most damaging thing that any society can be faced with, is too many lawyers, you know, absolutely unbelievable.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:50 is the time. Let's welcome former Labour Party spokesman James Mathewson to the show right now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm just wondering, first question, roughly how many Palestinian families from Gaza do you think that we should take here in the UK under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights on the basis of their exceptional right to come to this country because their homes have been destroyed, under the Ukraine family scheme?
I don't know.
You don't know? Give or take, to the nearest 100,000. Let's make it vague.
I don't think any Palestinian who wants to remain in Palestine should be moved
Gaza.
anywhere.
There's no place called I don't think there is anywhere called Palestine, is there? Gaza. So
why do
you think this family, two parents, 4 kids, they've been given the right to come to this country under Article 8, a right to a family life, because apparently one of them's got a brother here. They haven't seen him in 17 years, but they're very close. But I mean, it's because their home's been destroyed in Gaza. Do you think, and I know, we've had certainly people in the SNP have said this and some concerns raised by some Labour MPs, do you think that we should be offering refugee shelter to Gazan families?
I believe we should offer refugee shelter to anyone who needs it and who has a claim to make.
Do they need it?
They've got a claim. Well, that's for the claim to assess, isn't it? And that's what the Home Office does. It assesses their claim. If they put one in, and if they've got family here, connections to family here, then it's not for us, you or I, to decide that. It's for the Home Office to decide.
Bloody well think it is, as a voter and a resident of this country.
I know you would love to sit and assess each asylum claim on your show every day, Julia, but you can't do that.
I think I'd probably make better decisions. But you don't, in principle, have any issue with families from Gaza, Palestinian families raised on a diet of extremism from Hamas for the last God knows how many decades. You don't have an issue with them coming to this country. Do you think they'd make a good contribution to this country?
I think anybody who wants to come to this country to make a contribution to it has the potential to make a contribution to this country. So
a good contribution.
Welcome applications from anyone and everyone. That's
everyone can make a contribution. It depends, is it a good contribution, one that the rest of us would want?
Let's start weighing up on whether, the people who are already here and people who live here make a good contribution, shall we? Where do you draw the line? There's an asylum system in place.
I draw the line about whether we invite more people. We've got enough of our own wrong-uns, enough people who aren't working. I don't think we import other people, but particularly people who've been raised on a diet of Islamist extremism and hate to be under Hamas to come to our country. I'm just saying, is there a reason, do you think, why, I don't know, the Jordanians, the Egyptians and the Saudis don't want these people?
Have you been to Palestine? Have you met with any Palestinians?
No, there's no place there isn't a country called Palestine. I've not been to
Gaza.
Gaza,
those of us who recognise Palestine recognise it should be a state.
Well done you, but there isn't a state called Palestine. I'm stating a fact.
If you believe in a two-state solution, which isn't a radical thing, by the way, that's a moderate position.
I know, it's why Hamas doesn't believe in it. Anyway, but either way, that's irrelevant. Do you think these people do have a right to come here and they could make a contribution, yeah?
I believe anybody around the world who wants to claim asylum in Britain has the right to put an application in. Simple. It gets dealt with then by the Home Office.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
And as we know, the Home Office is fabulous at making the right decisions. It's quite terrifying, because I think I have a horrible feeling that even though you're a former Labour Party spokesman, that actually this is kind of the view of the Labour Party, isn't it? A lot of Labour MPs.
I think it's the view of the Conservative Party as well. I don't think it's.
I wonder why they're not in office anymore.
I do not think it's a radical view, because there is so much misinformation and misunderstanding about the asylum system. We should be, why shouldn't we have an asylum system like everyone else around the world? You have an asylum system, people can claim for it.
Why would we allow someone from Gaza to come in under the Ukraine family scheme? I mean, you think there's a clue in the name.
We're talking about, if you're a country who can't even handle applications being processed, that's embarrassing. It's an embarrassment that we can't handle that our Home Office can't handle applications.
We can't secure our borders. But anyway, your old boss, Keir Starmer, he's smashed the gang, so we got all that sorted.
He's not my old boss. He's on completely the other side of the Labour Party to the side I was on. However,
it's only one Labour Party.
That's his strategy, isn't it? That's what he's talking about doing. Okay. So we'll see if it pays off.
All right then. Well, I mean, he wants to hire a new independent inspector of the borders who wants to who lives in Finland and wants to work from home in Finland half the time. But I'm sure that would go down very well because we've got a bunch of Labour MPs, a dozen left-wing Labour MPs. I wonder if you support them or not. They're pushing ministers to introduce a 4-day working week as part of the overhaul of workers' rights in the Employment Rights Bill. Would you support that?
Yeah, entirely. Fully on board with the 4-day working week. The campaign who've been running the 4-day working week across Britain have had really, really, really positive engagement with the private sector. Some corporations who you would never expect to be champions of workers' rights in particular ways, who are now fully back in the 4-day working week because they're seeing the way the world's working and that it's moving towards automation with AI. People are, going to be wanting a better deal in the workplace, right. And that marketplace should be beneficial to workers as it is towards businesses.
I'm on air and I do other work, but I'm on air here 4 days a week. But I thought it was only reasonable when I cut my work down from 5 to 4 that I took the pay cut that commensurate with that because I wasn't expected to be paid the same to do fewer hours. The thing I've always found strange that people want to do a 4-day working week. That's one conversation to have with their employers. It's another when they say, but I want to be paid for 5 days, because when we're told, oh, but people are getting just as much done in the 4 days as they used to in the 5 days. What I hear is, I'm spending a fifth of my time doing very, very little, as opposed to actually people working more efficiently. They just haven't been working efficiently before. So the answer is that people just work more efficiently for the 5 days, surely.
But why is it 5 days?
Well, because we kind of need to have some kind of production level. I mean, people have. People have coped pretty well with that for the last, more than probably a century, haven't they?
You could say people coped with it being 7 for.
Well, they didn't. I mean, they didn't. They didn't, did they?
I mean, people aren't coping with it being 5 now.
Well, they are. Who isn't coping? I mean, only snowflakes are coping with that, for goodness sake.
Never mind, that's all right. I mean, it's not a very nice way to view people who have mental health issues, Julia. But I mean, at the same time,
who mentioned mental health issues?
I said mental health. I said
I didn't mention mental health issues. I said snowflakes.
People are pressed hard in workplaces, and people work hard.
I think a lot of people do absolutely bugger all day.
Fantastic.
I've worked in lots of offices. Yeah. I can assure you there's a lot of people who do absolutely nothing all day.
But I mean, do we not want a better quality of life for people anyway, generally,
I would like a better quality of life. I think a better quality of life comes from enjoying your work. If you're lucky enough to be in that situation, being well paid, achieving something. But I think also work-life balance, I get all of that. But I think also people would be happier if we were a wealthier country. We could share it. We were a bigger pie. We could work it out. And that involves people being productive, getting stuff done. Wouldn't that be useful?
It's always funny, though, isn't it? That the people who, you and I and people who are happy in our careers, presumably, think you're fairly happy, I'm fairly happy. People who are happy in their careers are always the ones to say, well, why don't people want to work long? Because most people aren't happy in their careers. Because most of the jobs that need done aren't jobs that you or I would even want to do tomorrow.
I've done a lot of the jobs which apparently people don't want to do. But here's the thing. We still need them done, and we need them done well.
Yeah, I left school when I was 17. I've worked those jobs. I've worked every job I can. I don't have a degree. I came through working to get into politics by accident through trade unionism. And, I understand fully what my friends work every single day and what their lives are like. And when they say that, look, I want to do less of it, but I still want to be paid the same, why isn't that a valid
because we can't afford it. That's why, and people end up losing work. Listen, James. I think we can all be safe to saying, given the net zero policies the government is pursuing, we're going to be heading to blackouts. So we're going to be in I'm old enough to remember the 1970s and 3-day working week. So we'll probably be there anyway. You'll get what you wish for. I'm going to have to leave it there. James Mathewson. Sorry, James, former Labour Party spokesman. Thank you for that brief word from Benedict Spence, because your face has been a picture throughout that.
Well, yes, I don't have enough time to answer all of that. All that I'd say is, yes, the move towards fewer working days and AI and all of that, it won't end up with people being paid more. It will then see a suppression of wages when people are then hired, which will mean that you will earn less. That's why companies are embracing this, because they know long term they're not going to have to pay people so much. I know.
It's just mind-blowing. An awful lot of people who've never run businesses apparently thinking it's all going to be great. Anyway, more from Benedict coming up. And next up, we're going to take the news. Then we're going to be talking to the brilliant Australian women's rights champion, Sal Grover. You don't want to miss this. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you are listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or on your connected device, it is absolutely fabulous to have your company. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. In just a couple of moments, I'm going to be chatting to Australian businesswoman and women's right champion, Sal Grover, about her extraordinary legal case in Australia. Tickle v Giggle is what it's called, but it's a darn sight more serious than the name suggests. We'll also be talking about the general latest trans ideological madness that is afflicting us here in Britain. We're also going to be talking about Israel's Prime Minister taking up Donald Trump's offer to defeat Hamas if they do not release all the hostages, not just the next three scheduled for release on Saturday. Netanyahu said Israel would resume intense fighting in Gaza if Hamas do not return the hostages by Saturday at noon. Also, one of the international judges who ruled against Britain over the Chagos Islands is a former Chinese government official who backed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I know, I'm as surprised as you are. And PMQs is back. It's just started, but the usual rules apply. Peter Cardwell is watching it, so you and I don't have to. He'll bring us the highlights, assuming there are any, a little bit later. This is Talk. Welcome to the home of common sense. Thanks, as always, for being with me. And Benedict Spence, of course, still here with us, Conservative commentator. We've shuffled you to the side to get our latest guests in. And I have to say, I would say ridiculously chuffed to actually meet this wonderful woman, to get her into the studio. And I know you are going to enjoy this interview. She is Sal Grover. She's an Australian businesswoman, and she is now, well, basically, Australian turf in chief, I would say, trans-exclusionary radical feminist. There's a ridiculous term that is used against women standing up simply for women's rights and safety. And you are over here in the UK and talking to people about the utterly absurd, laughable court case that you have been involved in and will no doubt continue to be involved in for some years to come. A very big welcome to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, there'll be an awful lot of people who will know what this is about. Tickle v Giggle is the court case. What a ridiculous name for a court case. This is obviously something silly and made up, and it's just a big satirical spoof. What a load of nonsense. It isn't, though. It's very serious. It's kind of taken over your life. So can you just take us back a few years now, actually, and explain what this case involves and how did it start?
Okay, so basically I created an app exclusively for women, a social networking app where women could connect to find like roommates and chat about pregnancy, anything that was like specifically for women.
Why was it just for women?
Because how we came up with the idea, I was coming off working in Hollywood. I'd sort of been there in this pre-Me Too world, and it was as horrible as sort of everyone says. And when I was sort of in therapy, recovering from it, my therapist said, you need a strong female support network in your life. And I was like, oh my God, it was a light bulb moment. I could see how different my life would be. So it was actually my mum and I got the idea to create an app for women where you could basically have a women-only support network in the palm of your hand.
Perfect.
So it wasn't in response to any of this stuff that is happening. I didn't know any of this. I hadn't heard the word TERF before.
You were living a normal life.
Yes, I was in reality.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So you set this app up.
Yep.
Great. And everything went well. And there's no need to interview her.
So basically, cancelled right out of the gate. That's how I was brought into it, basically. Woke up in the morning of February 7, 2020 to just thousands upon thousands of one-star reviews from people saying you're transphobic, you're a TERF. What on earth is going on? I started to do some research. That's when I stumbled across amazing women like Helen Joyce, Kathleen Stock, Julie Bindel, Suzanne Moore. I was reading everything they were writing going, what, you're telling me they're saying men are actually women? Like, this is something that's happening.
So this was a bunch of trans activists.
Yeah.
I don't call them trans women anymore because I think that's what's confused things. Trans-identifying men saying, we're women, just as you, so you can't exclude us from your app. How were you excluding them from the app?
So basically, when we were trying to work out how you'd even have an online female-only space, we discovered that there was this AI technology that was just basically sex recognition software that you take a selfie and it would know whether you're male or female because you actually can tell if someone's male or female by looking at them.
What? There's a biological difference.
There is.
Is that way that we just go through life generally, able to know whether someone's a man or a woman all the time?
Yeah, we don't walk into a bar and see someone attractive across the other side and go, I wonder what their gender identity is. Yeah. No, we know exactly what they are.
So you're using that. So you're basically able to weed people out who were there for the wrong reasons.
Totally, but we also had myself and other women behind the screens, just the good old-fashioned eye can tell. So it was the technology plus us, just making sure it was women only. Occasionally a man would get on because technology is not perfect, or you'd miss one, you'd be alerted to it, you'd remove him.
So this is where Roxy Tickle comes in. Can we, for those watching on YouTube or on a connected device, just put a picture up of Roxy Tickle. Roxy Tickle believes that he apparently is a woman. Roxy Tickle is a man.
Yes.
Okay, so he got onto your site. You responded by...
Yeah, I mean, I don't even actually remember removing him because it wasn't an event. Men would get past relatively frequently and we'd remove them. So I don't remember doing it.
It wasn't a big deal.
It was another day at the office.
Then what happened?
So the first time he became someone in my life was I got a call and a missed call and a text on my phone saying, I can't remember it, but something to the effect of, my name's Roxy Tickle, I've been banned from using the app and I want to use it. And because I had the phone number, I typed it into the server and this photo of a man came up and I called my dad and said, a guy who's been blocked from the app has somehow got my number and called and texted my phone. I'm pretty creeped out. And Dad said, block his number, forget about it and don't tell your mother. Because at that point I was getting lots of abuse and you get the threats and everything. So I did that, sort of pushed it out of my mind, not thinking anything of it, and then 3 months later I got an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint for gender identity discrimination from one Roxy Tickle, and to settle it in the Australian Human Rights Commission I would have had to agree to let him on the app, let all men who claim to be women on the app, go to sex and gender education, moderate all the content on the app how women were talking so that men who claim to be women weren't offended, pay him $20,000, and I think there was an apology, and I was reading it going,
really?
No.
And was there any part of you that thought, oh, it's not worth the battle?
Not at all, no.
Why not?
Because I'm a woman, and I'm a woman who likes reality. It's not just women-only spaces that are under attack here. It is literally our perception of reality. If we have to be told that men are women, there goes freedom of belief, freedom of speech, freedom of association, and if they can make you not even, maybe they can't make you believe it, but if
pretend to believe it,
to accept it, what's the next thing? Like I always say, I think that when Orwell was writing 1984 and he was like 2 + 2 = 5, it's like, okay, it's believable that they try and make you do that. Like he didn't lead with, we'll make them believe men are women. It's so unbelievable. It's so stupid. Yeah. So no, I just thought, I mean, I remember sitting there having the moment of if I don't settle in the Australian Human Rights Commission, I risk going to federal court. I was like, well, I mean, it's just, I'm in this situation now. I have no choice.
It wasn't something you could do. I know you've got a daughter as well, and so do I. And there comes a point. I've said to a lot of the younger women who are like, "Oh, just be kind. Be kind people." You feel a bit different when you've got a teenage daughter, don't you?
Well, I've got a 2-year-old daughter.
A 2-year-old.
Yeah, and this be kind. I mean, this is empathy being weaponized. Be kind to me. Like, why is it when I realised that we had to be kind to these men who claim to be women who are being so cruel to us? I'm like, no, that's not how it works.
But this is the thing as well. You like a lot of the people who've become absolute heroes of mine, the Maya Forstadters and others. They didn't choose this fight. You're a successful businesswoman. You go, I know what, I'm going to set up this app. And then it happened to you. Yes. They came for you. Yeah. Right. So let's talk about what happens next, because it goes to court. Of course, these things take a long time. Yep. They cost a lot of money. Yep. How were you able to fund the court case? Because to fight, he brought the case, well, basically the case comes to you.
Yeah, the case. So he filed in federal court, and the first round in federal court was just over $500,000. So I did that by I crowdfunded. Wow. I mean, I don't have... Like most people, I don't have $500,000 to overall. It's going to cost you over $1 million to fight this, and I don't have that sitting around. So on GiggleCrowdfund.com is where we have been crowdfunding it, and it's
we will put out the link.
It's literally been the support of people all around the world who care about not just women's rights, but the right to acknowledge reality, who have supported us along the way. And I mean, it's been I suppose, intimidating in a way, but also very inspiring, seeing how many people do actually care.
Exactly. Now, this goes to court. It's argued in court. He argues that he is a woman and therefore he has a right. I mean, he's not a woman. I don't know if we've got another picture of Roxy Tickle yet. I mean, there's a picture of him as he lives his life as he believes a trans woman. Do we have the other picture of him? Okay, we're going to get that. But I mean, another picture where he's quite clear. I mean, he's quite clearly a man. Why does he want to be in a women's only space when he's a man? It's very, very simple to that. But let's go back to the court case. You go to the court last summer, very lengthy case.
Mm-hmm.
Last summer, you lost the court case. Now, you'd expected to lose.
It's just
you prepared yourself.
Prepared myself to lose. Basically, in Australia, we are literally the canary in the coal mine of how bad this can get. In 2013, in our Sex Discrimination Act, they took out the definition of man and woman and they put in gender identity, and it completely muddled the act. And it's not like for over a decade it was working. The Australian Human Rights Commission was intimidating many women-only gyms and many women-only organisations who did crumble because it is intimidating. It is expensive. I'm just incredibly stubborn. They just picked the wrong girl. Whoops. I often wonder if they regret it.
But that's where it's different from the UK, where it's actually, there's been, I believe, misinterpretation of our equality laws, and gradually on tribunals and cases, we are getting that chat. I think we're going to win that. But you're in a different situation. They're trying to change the law. The law has already been changed long ago in Australia.
And so it had to be tested, basically. So this was the first test, and it wasn't just the first test case in Australia. Actually, it was in the world of the first test case in common law of sex versus gender identity and which one has more weight. And the judge in our case basically tried any which way he could to find where he could get gender identity to have more weight than sex in the Sex Discrimination Act. And he ruled at the end that, men can be women. And not only that, sex isn't binary and it's changeable. Nonsense. He ruled nonsense.
Absolute factual nonsense. But again, this is with the whole point of the Sex Discrimination Act, the whole point of these acts is because of the fundamental physical difference between men and women. There's a reason why we have women's sport, why we have women's changing rooms, women's prisons. There's a reason why it all happened. And again, I keep pointing out to people, this wasn't given to us. There was a reason why women fought for these things.
Completely. And this is the frustrating thing in Australia right now, that we have politicians that will not touch this issue. They're saying we're not going to import Trumpian politics, it's a culture war, or there's no issue. And I'm like, well, if there's no issue, can you please let your courts and the Australian Human Rights Commission know, because they have no problem making it such an issue that they will drag women through litigation for potentially 5 years.
I'm really fed up with a lot of men telling me there's no issue. But also, I'm with you. I don't think this is just about women's rights and women's safety. I do think this is about, Orwellian levels of thought control and telling us that up is down and black is white, 100%. And us simply saying, no, we're not going to play it. And as you say, where does it go from here? So you lost that case. You go to appeal. Talk us through what the court process is, and you've got to go all the way to Supreme Court because you need to get the law changed. So how many different stages do you have to go through?
So at the moment we're in the appeal to the full federal court. So that's 3 judges. So we had our first case management hearing yesterday in Australia. So I mean it was very quick. The next interlocutory hearing is for April 7th, and then the actual appeal will be heard in August. We'll hopefully get a decision by December.
So 18 months after the last decision.
So if we win this round, it would be the other side that would have the opportunity to take it to the High Court. Now the High Court's the highest we have in Australia. If we lose, we would take. I've always said I'll take it to the High Court. So the High Court is when you're going to get into sort of the constitutional challenge element, which is what part of our defence from day dot, which is these amendments that happened in 2013, which were done with Julia Gillard's government, by the way, our first woman Prime Minister, while she was giving that misogyny speech to Tony Abbott behind the scenes. She was removing women in law. I'll never forget it. So we have to remove those amendments, which so the argument is they're unconstitutional, and I've seen all the evidence they are unconstitutional. So this is my thing. Politicians could fix this in a week for free, but the Australian politicians won't touch it. So I've got to raise $1 million to do it.
I mean, you said there were threats. I mean, a lot of women have had a lot of that who've stood up on this issue. How bad has it got? Have you worried for your own personal safety, for your child's safety?
No, I mean I keep her very safely away from it. So absolutely, she's fine. For mine, there has been a few moments, but I suppose I make choices to keep myself as safe and away from everything as I possibly can. That's the thing, isn't it? You have to make those decisions. Just by saying men are not women, suddenly you're some sort of target for abuse.
Well, I know you've been in touch, I think, with Kelly J. Keane, who's taken this on the road and standing in the street and saying women will speak, and we will say not our truth, the truth. There's only one truth. And the abuse, the threats. I mean, New Zealand, she basically had to leave the country for her own safety. This is, a lot of people have got their heads in the sand. An awful lot of people. I know you were having a conversation on Twitter with Dan Hodges, who's a commentator here, someone I've known for many years. And it's amazing how many people are just sort of going, oh, I just don't know what the issue is. And it's just sort of, well, yeah, you haven't been living this for the last 10 years.
Well, he actually, I had an interaction with him, and he said, you don't have to make an argument about it. You don't have to do anything. Just say they're not allowed in because they're biologically male. And I'm like, oh, why didn't we lead with that? What do you think we have been saying? That's all we're saying. We've tried to be respectful. We've tried to be kind. We've done everything. We are up against deranged people who are very angry that we are basically interrupting their delusion and trying to just bring reality back to the situation.
Well, that's the thing. So I want to ask you, what do you think the motivation is? Because I can remember a time when I would, as a younger woman, I really railed against, certainly a big thing in Britain, is sort of gentlemen's clubs where all the power was, so all the politicians, the journalists and the judges, they all meet in the same places, and they've got that power, they make those networks, and women were excluded from that. And then they've set up some women's clubs, and largely those clubs have mostly become both sexes over the years. But I could see the argument people could, where power is entrenched somewhere and other people are excluded. But this wasn't an app about power. This is just about women being able to speak freely. It's like women wanting to go to the gym without having some muscle-bound bloke sweating over and explaining stuff to her and grunting. There are reasons why women want separate spaces from men, which are very different from the reasons why men want them.
100%. I mean, men and women are different, so men and women's only spaces
transphobe and bigot at this point.
Men and women only spaces are different, and the reasons for them. Now, I'm actually not opposed to male only spaces for recreation at all. I think there has been a little bit of overreach there, and I think that men should be able to have
I've changed my view on that
men only spaces. But once upon a time, it was where power was hoarded, and it was right to dismantle that because women are 50% of the population. So when there's decisions about society made, women should be involved. But for recreation, there should be no controversy about men and women having their own spaces to choose to go to. Like you're not mandated to go to them. It's an option.
Why do you think those people like? I haven't we got that picture yet? Because I do want to put a picture up of Roxanne Tickle Roxanne Tickle as he actually does look. I don't know if still trying to get it up, but if we can, I don't know where it's gone. Here we are. I mean, there's a picture of him. I mean, that's what he actually looks like. I mean, he can tell me he's a woman all day, but he isn't. I don't even like using the term trans woman anymore, simply because it just confuses people, and I think that's where we started making mistakes. You're probably like me. I used to use people's preferred pronouns because I just wanted to be nice and polite. Well, I realised early on that was where we got the problem. We've ended up having women having to refer to their rapist in court as her penis. I mean, that's the madness you go down. What's the motivation, do you think, of people like Roxanne Tickle? Not born Roxanne, obviously. What's his motivation to want to be in a women's only space?
I mean, my answer is basically I don't know. I can only say what my interpretation of it is and say it feels very personal at this point. Like I'm very much wanting to establish women's rights, run a woman-only app, and move on with my life. Yeah. It's never felt like that from the other side. And, I don't understand going to this lengths and trying to take someone to federal court to go into an app where no one wants you there.
Yeah.
Women don't want.
Is it the fact that you don't want him there and women don't want him there? Do you think that's part of it?
I think that a lot of men who claim to be women are very angry at women who say that no, you're not, and so
I think they're just angry at women. Full stop.
Oh yeah, I don't think they like us at all. And this is their way of articulating it. But I think that there are some who think that and this is I'm not talking about anyone specific, but it's just that we should be punished, or if there is a way to make us believe it. And I've always said, like, maybe you could get a court to accept you're a woman. You will never get me to accept you're a woman. There is absolutely nothing on this planet that will ever make me believe that a man is a woman.
J.K. Rowling has said, if this law was brought in Scotland about his, well then, I'll go to jail. A lot of us will say, yep, I said I'll take the top bunk if I can, please. But we're all happy to go to jail on this one. Have you had much support from some of the leading campaigners here in the UK? I know you've been in Scotland. I mean, J.K. Rowling, I've seen you've had some exchanges on social media, on X with her. She's been a fantastic campaigner on this issue and taken a horrendous abuse. She's also got very deep pockets. You wouldn't even need to crowdfund. I mean, has she offered any help to you on this?
No, but I've never asked. I don't assume. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like I've been raising the money, and as I said, it's the kindness of strangers and supporters all around the world. I will say, UK TERFs are the most supportive ever. Like obviously there's the big names. I mean, Helen Joyce and Kathleen Stock were expert witnesses in the case, and we're still fighting to make sure all of their evidence will be actually acknowledged by the judge because he ignored it last time. But it's even just the TERFs that are names that you don't know. These women are so strong, they're so smart, and everyone just supports everybody and just makes things happen. I'm endlessly impressed by UK TERFs.
Well, I mean, I think even if you end up losing, say this goes all the way to Supreme Court in Australia and you ended up losing, I think to a certain extent we kind of need to hit rock bottom to expose the abject madness. In the UK, the situation with a double rapist, Isla Bryson, standing there with you could see his tackle, for goodness sake, through his tight leggings with a wig on and fake boobs, saying that he was a woman, and the then First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, defending that him going into women's prison. You kind of have to have the absurdity spelt out for people to go, oh, hold on, this is utterly insane.
I think so, and I mean, I think over the next 2 years is going to be this appeal and then going to the High Court. The political climate is rapidly changing. It's undeniable. It's not 2020 anymore. So I think that Australian politicians who are not actually picking this issue up are fools.
Oh, they're way behind the curve.
You have an absolute slam dunk thing here that so many people actually will vote on. Well, and they're not doing it.
That said, in the UK, we have a Prime Minister who thinks that 99.9% of women don't have a penis, but 0.1% do. That's about 30,000 women. We have an NHS doctor currently in a tribunal who is a man who claims he is a woman, who has said that he doesn't think there is any such thing really as biological sex and believes himself to be biologically female. This is a man who's treating people, psychiatric patients. We also have a new public health minister who believes that trans women are women, as in trans-identified men are women, and that if someone wants to identify as a llama, then they should be treated with dignity and respect. So, I mean, there's quite a lot of madness here.
Yeah, it's insane. It's worse night messed up. It's dystopian. And as I said at the very beginning, if they can make you accept men as women, they can make you accept anything. So this is a fight for our dignity as human beings in a society. That we have control of how we see the world.
Absolutely.
I won't give it up.
No, but before I let you go, though, let's bring in Benedict Spence, who's listening to all of this and has joined us for the show. What do you make
normally
of this?
I go to my male-only space at the East India Club and I ignore all of this because this is somebody else's problem. But this is ultimately why you have to have single-sex spaces so that you can be around like-minded people. Yeah. And the big giveaway, of course, as to why these people, let's say magically somehow they were women, they would understand why it is that women feel very strongly about this. They would have some empathy, but they don't, and instead they behave like men. They're very aggressive, they're very bullying. These really ought to be giveaways to people like Sir Keir Starmer that, oh no, in fact, these are not. You can't just magically become a woman and carry on behaving and acting and physically being a man. It doesn't work that way. But as you say, it's about getting people to believe the unbelievable. And once you've got that, well, imagine the other possibilities that you can get people to believe. All sorts of nonsense.
My objection is always, again, safety, rights, the sanity, the truth, but also just the idea that being a woman is just a feeling that a man has on a Wednesday afternoon, as opposed to an actual factual reality, we are an actual thing.
It was so amazing in federal court, actually, when the Australian Human Rights Commission was even trying to define what gender identity is, and they couldn't. They spent hours sort of just fumbling through, and eventually it sort of came down to it's a thought. And it was just so absurd that you should even know what someone's thoughts are, what one, know, and two, care. And my barrister got up there and just said, a woman is not a thought. We're talking about something that is actual objective fact here, and you're just saying it's a thought. No.
Yeah, it is genuinely terrifying. It's both laughable and infuriating at the same time. Well, I, for one, and I'm pretty sure my entire audience is behind me on this, want to thank you for fighting the good fight. Again, like most of the women involved in this, not a fight you picked, but my God, you have fought a valiant fight on behalf of, your daughter, my daughter, everyone's daughters, and all of us. And I absolutely support you. We are going to put this out online, and we will be obviously putting the links so you can help contribute to a fight for sanity. That's what it's not transphobia, it's not being a fight for pure sanity. Sal Grover, you are an absolute hero of mine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Fingers crossed for the win. 12:26 is the time. This is Talk.
Government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high, and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear? Will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence. She has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Wasn't Sal Grover absolutely fantastic? If you missed any of that, we'll put it out online again with that link. Come on. The crowdfunding, a fight for sanity in Australia. This has impacts around the world. We see what's happened in America, how much that will impact here. We can see how these things happen. Anyway, lots more going on. Let's get back to your calls and your text messages. I haven't got too many text messages today yet about the Palestinian family in Gaza. Mum, dad, four kids. They've been granted the right to live in Britain after applying through a scheme meant for Ukrainian refugees. The giveaway that it was meant for Ukrainian refugees was it was called the Ukraine Family Scheme. I know, you'd think that was only meant for Ukraine. Apparently, a judge at a tribunal said, well, no, actually, it could have been meant for a wider group. So lawyers advised that this family applied. This could, of course, open the floodgates to thousands more Gazan refugees. I'm asking you to get your thoughts in on this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text 87222, message us at Talk TV. Gregory says, to be honest, 78% of the public voted for parties that would bring them here. Oh, God, was it that big? Good Lord. Paul says, inviting trouble for the future. We can see what's going to happen next. Jack says simply, no, no, no. This can't be allowed to happen. The country is overcrowded as it is. But you all knew this would happen at some point. Jennifer says, quite obvious this was going to happen. What say have British people got on this matter? None. Mary says, so a scheme set up for a specific population of people can now be used for anyone. Hamas could be moving to Britain en masse. Who will be protecting our Jewish communities? It's a boiling pot already. Yeah, by the way, there's a story today about the massive rise in anti-Semitism against Jewish people. I wonder who most of the perpetrators of that are. I just can't imagine. Let's get to the calls now. Robert is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Julia.
Hello. What do you make of this?
I phoned up to talk about the migrant situation, but I just want to clear one or two things up. My name's Robert. I'm 72 years of age. I was born a man. I identify as a man. In actual fact, I had a quick look in the shower before we come on. A bit disappointed with what I see, but I still identify as a man. Is that okay? Do you want to talk to me?
That is okay. I'm just relieved. I'm just relieved that some of our audience do shower.
Yeah, well, I could have been lying about that. Yeah.
Oh, I love it, Robert. I love it. It is, honestly, it's madness, isn't it? But look, you want to talk about the Gaza refugees, don't you?
Well, I do want to talk about that, but you was right on some of your earlier points. We've got to get rid of the activist judges and lawyers before we do anything else. Now, I'm a Brexiteer, and I'm so disappointed that we're still in, it's years down the line, we're still in the European Court of Human Rights. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
It's the idea that they know better than us. That's the thing I find. But that's because we've got people like Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, these people, and they think that somehow the courts know better than the people because they seem to think you can't change the law. But the whole point of us electing a government is that we elect MPs who then form a government who then can change the law.
Yeah, but I voted reform straight after the election, only to cheer myself up. That's why I've done it. But now that's a very fast-growing party, but people are in for a shock. Because unless they get rid of the activist judges, Nigel Farage is going to have all his teeth pulled out. He ain't going to be able to do anything, nothing at all. So
unless he gets rid of them, if he became Prime Minister. I mean, you'd need to have a Trump, Elon Musk style purge. I mean, you really would. It's got that bad.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's got the gonads to do it.
Well, I just don't know if you've got the power to do it here. That's the thing. I mean, I'm at the point now where I think pretty much every single civil servant needs to be like, right, we're just going to reevaluate because they're certainly not independent anymore, and I don't think they understand the notion of being servants to ministers either. Robert, appreciate your call. Appreciate your shower. Alan is in Shropshire. Hello, Alan.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Hello. What do you want to say?
I came in before. We've been lambing my sheep, and I just came in to get a quick cup of tea. And there was what I believe to be a Labour politician on. And he was saying, Labour want this, Labour want that, Labour want the other. I mean, what about the British people? I mean, the political parties are supposed to be standing up and looking after the British people because, I mean, we elected them into office. Why aren't they doing what we want? Why are they doing what
Well, I mean, the Tories didn't. I suppose they've learned. But again, don't they realise that's why the Tories are out on their rear? I mean, we're seeing a lot of tough talk from Starmer and Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary. They've definitely changed their tune since they've got in because they've realised what a massive issue that is for them. But I don't think they have any power over these activist judges and lawyers either.
Yeah, well, in that case, then they've got to change the law. I mean, they're the government; they're in charge. Why can't they change the law?
That's my thing. I think the British people are just going to say, there's not much we can do about it. They're not going to put up with that anymore. That's the reason why we voted for Brexit. So they couldn't blame the EU for everything anymore. So we could hold them to account. They can't now blame the judges and the courts. No, we're going to hold you to account.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, they've got to stand up. I mean, Britain is the best country in the world. I mean, we're totally, we're very, very proud to be British. Why haven't we got a government that is actually proud to be British and wants to lead the British people the same as Trump is doing in America?
Absolutely nailed it. Thank you very much, Alan. Appreciate that. Benedict Spence?
Yeah, Alan there was talking about James Mathieson, I assume, and that's good because I wanted to come back
He's a former Labour spokesman,
and he said something that was very interesting. When you asked him, should people be allowed to come, and he gave the proceduralist answer, which said, I think anybody should be able to apply. And what does that mean? They want to be British, they want to contribute. But of course, what does that mean, to want to be British, to want to contribute? We're always told, aren't we, what are British values? And people turn around and go, well, can you define them? No. And it is deliberately, well, this is the point, by those sorts of people, it is deliberately redefined as multiculturalism and tolerance and diversity. And that's it's an insidious thing to basically turn around and go, anybody who wants, it's free to apply, we're not going to say they are going to get in. However, here is a very large list of things that if they tick any of them, they'll get in. And what are those things? Diversity, inclusion, not British values.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. 12:36 is the time. Coming up, we are going to be hearing from Peter Carball about PMQs, what's happened in that. We're going to talk about where we are with Israel and Hamas, the ceasefire, and indeed the Chagos Islands as well. Time now, though, right now, to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning 25 grand.
It's competition time, and we're giving you a chance to win a whopping £25,000. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Well, very good luck to you all for that. Coming up after the break, as I say, we're going to be talking about where we are on the international scene, and we're also going to be finding out what happened at PMQs and what a surprise can be big. Not did bring up that Palestinian family being granted refugee status here in Gaza. We'll hear more about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:39 is the time. Benedict Spencer with me as well. Let's turn our attention to what is going on in Gaza and Israel. We've been talking about the Palestinian refugees coming, but what's actually happening there with Professor Anthony Gleeson. He's a security and intelligence expert. Very good afternoon to you, Anthony.
Good afternoon,
Thanks
Julia.
so much for joining us. Well, we've got this, this ultimatum initially from Donald Trump and also now iterated from Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, this midday Saturday deadline, not just for the three hostages who were due to be released under the first, the original ceasefire terms with Hamas, but for all of the hostages to be released midday on Saturday, or basically we return to war. What do you make of that? What do you think will happen?
Well, what I make of it is chaos, I'm afraid.
into an already chaotic situation, a scene of total destruction, really. Further chaos has been injected by Donald Trump, first of all saying that some 2 million Gazans need to be displaced to Jordan and Egypt, and if Jordan and Egypt don't agree, he'll stop aid, and now saying that unless all the hostages are released by Saturday, all hell will break loose. I mean, many people will feel that all hell has already broken loose. And the reason it's chaotic is because, although historically some 16 million Eastern Germans were deported after 1945 and moved to Western Germany, so many more than there are Palestinians in Gaza, you can deport very large numbers of people. The Germans had a state to go to, but there's no state for the Gazans to go to. So that's one reason for fundamental chaos here.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, people have talked about, oh, this is ethnic cleansing, and certainly it came as a bolt out of the blue. But the reality is actually, certainly post the Second World War, there have been numerous occasions when huge numbers of people, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, have been displaced. Those ethnic groups are sort of like, right, we're going to move you guys here, we're going to move you guys here, and we'll stop these battles. This is in Europe. This has actually been, repeatedly done. Now, Palestinian people may well, we're told, not want to be moved. But at the end of the day, if Donald Trump is not prepared to put troops on the ground, which by all accounts he isn't, and I doubt very much the American people would want that, or indeed the American troops would want that. If the Jordanians, the Egyptians and the Saudis refuse to take these people, and they've made that damn clear they don't want them, and that's rather one of the reasons why I'm wondering why we would want any refugees from Gaza, given the incredible sort of radicalisation of those people by en masse by their Hamas overlords. What does happen? Because Donald Trump can talk all the talk he wants, and it may just be he's kind of thrown in a little bit of grenade to sort of shake things up and get everyone's attention and focus minds. But at the end of the day, if he can't back that up, what does happen?
Well, I think the back of Donald Trump's mind, maybe, after all, he's of German origins, maybe he knows about what happened at the end of the Second World War.
He probably doesn't.
He probably doesn't. He thinks that a new beginning is possible, and he's right. There has to be a new beginning, but that new beginning has to be based on a state for the Palestinian people, because without that state, you can't move anybody anywhere, even if you
Well, he's suggesting somewhere in Saudi Arabia. They've got loads of land, he said.
Yeah, but that is ridiculous. We've spent, 76 years dealing with the fallout of Palestinians having been displaced from land that they share. They share with the Jews in the Middle East.
Well, the Jews were displaced as well. Every Arab country expelled Jews.
The Jews were displaced.
Everyone forgets that small fact.
The lesson is, if you think the Jews should have a national home, and I think many serious people do think that's right, then you should also hold that the Palestinians should have a national home.
No, I know. See, I don't think that does follow. I don't think that does follow. I think there's a specific reason why. We all know what that reason is. It begins with H. We all know why why Jewish people felt the need to have a homeland where they could be safe. Which is very different, I think, from a Palestinian. French people wanting their land, British people wanting their land. I completely understand that, but I do think those calls are different. But the question is, the two-state solution has been offered again and again and again. The Palestinian leadership, but the Palestinian people, what they want, often, I don't know, gets thrown out the window. Palestinian leadership won't accept it. There is no moderate Palestinian leadership. There's marginally less radical, murderous and extreme leadership other than Hamas. But there's still massive extremists who still think that Israel should be eradicated. The reality is the Palestinian leadership don't want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution, as I keep on saying, and that doesn't involve Israel.
Well, some do and some don't. And the real problem is that we'll have another 76 years of jihadist terrorism unless the Palestinians are given a national home. I'm convinced that is the only way.
Do you think that will resolve it? I've got a funny feeling.
Let me make this point. You see, what Netanyahu has not done is very serious. He didn't keep Israel safe on the 7th of October. He was totally focused on Hezbollah, and they were dealt with, but ignored Hamas. we're now dealing with the fallout. He hasn't even destroyed Hamas. We're seeing them put on these awful displays, returning the Israeli hostages. What do we see? We see these terrorists there posturing. And yes, you can destroy Gaza, you can disrupt the capability of Hamas as a military force, but you can't destroy them as a jihadist force unless the Palestinians are given a state and money, and Donald Trump forgets his idea of a Riviera on what is a charnel house. You have 50,000 people killed. It's unrealistic.
It is interesting, though, isn't it, that Hamas have ordered their senior leaders in Gaza to stop using mobile phones to hide their locations, although, again, everyone gave up the pages some time ago. Professor Anthony Glees, so good to talk to you. Do come on again, a security and intelligence expert there, Anthony Glees. Benedict Spence, just want to bring you in. We talked about this earlier, so I want to bring you on actually on a different topic. And that is there's this ruling on the Chagos case that has basically led to us being paying for no good reason at all, giving Chagos to Mauritius, not back to them, they never owned it, these islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean, paying for the privilege, huge billion sums of money. But it turns out the original court case, which means that apparently at the International Court of Justice we should absolutely obey this, one of the international judges who ruled against Britain over the Chagos Islands is, surprise, surprise, a former Chinese government official who backed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is the kind of court. And these are the people, by the way, who are attacking Israel and these court decisions and issuing arrest warrants to Netanyahu. I mean, these are, again, like our tribunals and our judges and our courts here, blatantly, outrageously, not independent, very biased, and motivated by God knows what causes.
As I say, when people look at the members of the international community, the much austere, respected international community, you look at them as individual countries and you go, would you like to live in any of those? The answer in 90% is no. Why is it then that when they all get together in a little room and they think, oh, we're going to have some fun, we then go, well, they are very respectable, a learned judge from Shanghai and another one from Somalia, and you just think, that's not how this works. And if anything, and on top of that, of course, it wasn't even a ruling. It was an opinion. It was not legally binding at all. So quite aside from the fact that international law does not really exist unless you're a superpower and you can back it up, they weren't even pretending that it was international law. They were just going, that's the way the wind's blowing.
It's utterly mind-boggling, as is pretty much everything that happens in this government right now, I have to say. I'm afraid time is against us. We're going to have to say goodbye to you. Benedict Spence, thank you so much for joining us. I hope your train home is less stressful than your train here.
I might just well stay here. I'll be here next week.
If you were listening earlier, we haven't had any offers to have his babies yet, but we're working on that.
I'll check my phone.
Check your phone, absolutely. Up next, we're going to take a quick break. They're going to be talking to Peter Cardwell, talk presenter, political commentator. He's been watching PMQ, so we didn't have to. What's been going on? This is Talk.
Today I will sign a series of historic executive orders. We will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars. I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 12:51. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Delighted to be joined now by Peter Cobble. Only time I ever get to see you. Talk presenter, political commentator. Very lucky me. You've been watching PMQ, so we don't have to. Usual rules. Was it a good one?
It was actually quite punchy today.
I like that.
I think Keir Starmer probably won. I'm not sure. I'll let viewers and listeners decide.
Because Kemi had a good one last week, didn't
she did. But this one, it was interesting, particularly in the second clip we're going to look at. There was a little bit of homework that I think perhaps wasn't done. But the first clip was the sort of main issue is about Gaza immigration. You've been talking about it right throughout the programme today.
Amazing story. OK, so this is Kemi Badenoch asking the Prime Minister about this extraordinary story of Palestinian family in Gaza being granted the right to live in Britain. That's up next. Let's have a watch.
There are very serious questions now. There are very serious questions now being asked about the Attorney General, the Prime Minister's personal friend and donor. Even Labour ministers are concerned. One Labour peer, Lord Glassman, has called him the absolute archetype of an arrogant progressive fool. Yeah. If we are serious about protecting our borders, we need to make sure we appoint people who believe in our country and everything we stand for. It is not clear the Attorney General does. The government is now recruiting a new Chief Inspector of Borders who lives in Finland and wants to work from home. This is not serious. Why should the British public put up with this?
The individual in question was appointed in 2019 by the last government to a senior position. He then worked for 5 years from Finland. We've changed that, and he's now going to be working from the United Kingdom full-time. Finland under them. And she talks about the Attorney General. She sat round the cabinet table with an attorney who was later sacked for breaching national security.
Right, eagle-eared listeners will point out that wasn't the clip that we just thought it was. We are going to get that one up, I promise you. You touched on that already, Peter, this clip. So explain what this is all about.
So there's two issues here. One is about this immigration official who Labour have appointed. He's been working for the last 5 years from Finland, working from home in Finland. And Keir Starmer sort of pointed out and said, well, she hasn't really done her homework here because, first of all, the Conservatives appointed him to a senior position. We, Labour, have appointed him to a much more senior position, but we're saying he has to work in the UK. So that's that point. Some of the time. The second point is about Richard Hermer, who's a very controversial Attorney General, and essentially Maurice Glassman, who's a Labour peer, saying, is he actually patriotic, especially when it comes to Israel, especially when it comes to
he seems to have his finger in virtually every
pie. A lot of pies,
Chagos Islands, every single decision. I mean, he thinks we should be paying reparations. Yep. He is a classic sort of human rights, sort of wishy-washy, hand-wringing liberal who basically thinks that everything that Britain has ever done is terrible and we're bad people and we owe the world a big apology and money.
And of course he is Keir Starmer's BFF and has given him a donation to his leadership campaign as well. So essentially those two questions were asked. Keir Starmer hits back and says, A, he's working in the UK, so cool your boots, and secondly, I
still don't think that flies as much. But again, as I always do to all of our Tory guests, but you did this, you did that. Yes. Again, I don't know how long that flies for the Tories. I think we can do it. I don't think it flies very long for them because they're in charge.
And that came into the Gaza question as well, which we can show you now.
We've got that now.
Yes, that very much comes into that.
Let's have a watch and listen of what Kemi Badenoch asked Keir Starmer about that.
This case has arisen because a Palestinian came to the UK from Gaza in 2007. he is now a British citizen. This is precisely why we need to break the conveyor belt from arriving in the UK to acquiring indefinite leave to remain, and then a British passport, and now a right to bring 6 family members here as well.
They presided over record high levels of immigration. Reached nearly 1 million. It was a one-nation experiment in open borders. And she was the cheerleader. She was the one campaigning for more people to come and thanking her own side when they supported her campaign. So before she lectures us, I think she needs to reflect on her own record and her own record here.
See, once again, we've got Keir Starmer hitting back, oh, but your record, and that's a very fair argument, isn't it, Peter Caldwell?
But also, you're the Prime Minister, mate.
Yeah, it was
you
asked
have
to
been for 7 months.
I mean, yeah. So what's the timescale on that? Because again, we had, remember, when the Tories first came in, Cameron Osborne, like, oh, look at the mess that the Labour left. People go at some point, yeah, we elected you to sort it out.
But the thing with Cameron and Osborne, whether he hated austerity, thought they were, the devil incarnate, they had a plan.
By the way, they were also re-elected.
Yes.
Small point worth making.
Yes, indeed, with the majority. And the question is for Keir Starmer, where's your plan? And I think a lot of people aren't seeing that.
Absolutely. And again, the fact that, the thing that we find mind-boggling is we've got, a Ukraine refugee scheme, Ukraine family scheme, sorry. I mean, the clue is in the name, once you can finally get the name out. It doesn't mention anyone from Gaza.
Yes, it doesn't. And yet this scandal has happened.
And the idea that someone has a right, I mean, why this brother has got British citizenship, again, we're handing that out like confetti to anybody and everybody, but why the idea that because your brother lives somewhere, you've got a right to come and live here. I find it utterly bizarre.
My brother lives in a nice big house. I don't have the right to live in a nice big house. No. I live in a small flat. It's not automatic.
It's just utterly bizarre. But again, I think Keir Starmer's fully signed up to all this stuff.
Yes,
I really think he is.
Yeah.
It's really quite bizarre. Have you heard about Rachel Reeves' new pictures?
No, tell me about this.
Oh my God, the Chancellor has replaced lots of pictures of former Chancellors of the Exchequer, because they, of course, weren't the first woman Chancellor of the Exchequer, Disraeli, people like that. And she's replaced them with the most god-awful, I like modern art, but god-awful modern art, which are pictures and images of the COVID pandemic. And they are they're sort of crayon versions of the Scream, I think is the best way of describing them. We haven't got them right. We can't show the picture. They are so awful. What wonderful thing is, though, at least she's going to be in the right mood. She's going to know the mood of the country when she makes her announcements in April in the spring statement, isn't she? Because we're all going to be feeling the same level of pain.
Sounds like art with a capital F.
I love it. Listening to all of this, desperate to get in, Mr. Ian Collins.
She's also apparently got her treasured signed photo of Bobby Davro as well, sits on her desk.
We've all got one of those.
We've all got one of those.
I met Bobby Davro about a year ago. I was so excited.
We met him at James's didn't we? And
it's an absolute hoot.
Yeah, he
listens to the show.
He's very funny. He listens to the station.
Well, he's old school. I don't know how we got onto Bobby Davro.
He's not that old school though.
What are you talking about today?
Bobby Davro.
Leading story.
Have you met the Bobster? Are you a Davro fanatic, a Davroette, as they're known? We'd like to get all those calls. Call out with your Davro.
What I love is that things have actually improved on the show after basically we put a call out for people to offer to have Benedict's babies.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean,